Good morning, esteemed Professor M.A. Uman, who is going to chair this meeting. Honorable Finance Minister, who was expected, and there is a certain element of uncertainty today. He might come. There is some uncertainty. That's what I was told. Respected panelists, particularly Professor K.P. Kannan, Sri C.P. John, he's expected any time now. Professor Alvin Prakash, Professor Mary George, Professor Ravi, Professor Ramkumar, who is going to be with us online, Professor Jiju, who is also going to be online with us, Sri Adi Keshavan, who is also expected online. Dr. Sonia George is expected. I think she might be joining any time. Dr. Christabel. More importantly, the co-organizers of this event. I'm referring to President of TMA, Sri Padma Kumar, and Mukesh is here. There are some other members joined online. And the faculty and students of the Department of Political Science and Public Administration, University of Kerala. And friends of GIFT who have joined online, my colleagues, and of course, my beloved students over here. Very good morning, and my job is to give the usual welcome job. That is the director's job. I thought there is severe time constraint. Before getting into my job, I thought I will flag off at least 1 or 2 points within 2 minutes time. I think to begin with, we need to be highly disciplined, particularly the panelists. I know that many of them are the geriatric departments. Some of them are diabetic. So we should conclude it by 1 o'clock, for which the cooperation of the panelists is very important. And I was told that the chairperson is going to offer a gift for the most disciplined speaker. And another 2 more points. One is, I think this discussion in a world of too much discussion on on budget, because by the time the budget is announced in February, March, there is an enormous growth of public finance experts in the country. Everybody become an expert on public finance. And from this, I want to take 2 points. Point number 1 is that there is no meaning in discussing budget without knowing the economy. A discussion of the budget has to be in conjunction with the economic review of the state. And that is what is going to be distinguishing this discussion from that of others. And second point that derives from here, I think, I'm very much an infant in public finance, but in the last 3 years, I understand that there is we badly need a public finance of a developing economy. We, as in many other disciplines, we blindly emulate the Western and the theories which are developed elsewhere, and we blindly practice them. The typical example of that, which its outcome, its consequence is reflected in our state budget, is, I would say, the stipulation of FRBM, which I would consider the most nonsensical piece of legislation that this country has passed. While such restrictions are given to developing countries, those who preach those restrictions, they hardly practice. And we know that at the global level, the debt GDP ratio is 247%, out of which public debt is as high as 96%. And in Kerala today, the most debated point is about public debt. If we were conscious of our developing country context, there would have been an act of public debt monitoring, how you use the debt rather than how much you borrow. And this limit has actually led to the kind of our budget size. If you look at that, in 2021, there was an 18% growth in the size of the budget. And we expected 6% growth next year, but actually it was downsized. And this year, the growth rate is hardly 5 to 6%, which in a real sense, with 6% inflation, the size is going to be, is actually in sense, there's no increase in the size. And this assumes nearly 39,000 borrowing. And we know the study with Anita and me, we have done, we found that we have already borrowed only 19,000. Maximum we can borrow under 10,000 is quite unlikely. That means there will be 10,000 cut again in the budget, budget size. So the point I'm trying to say that this is the constraining environment which is imposed by the central government, which is merely keeping a fiscal deficit of 6.4%. And while we are asked to follow it, and this we have maintained it at 3.5%. Again, that the great gap between preaching and practice is not happening. Not only at the global level to India, and from national level to subnational level. So these are, and again, ours is a state which, Dr. Khanna and others were talking, our own tax GDP ratio is 6.6%, actually 0.01, hardly, just on par with the national level. And ours is a state with almost 60% more per capita income. And our tax GDP should be high. And we are a state which, with Scandinavian level social protection and African level taxation. And we are a state with people are rich, government is pauper. How can we continue? I'm sure our enlightened and highly experienced panelists will reflect on these and other related issues. With this, I would like to get into my job of welcoming. GIFT has been organizing regularly discussion on budget at the central level and the state level. And the first day we had a discussion on union budget. And these people, the eminent scholars who are with us, they are in fact the great friends of this institute. And without their active involvement, we could not have accomplished anything. So I'm extremely happy that Professor Meumann, who is, I'm not here to introduce. I'm only welcoming them with a great deal of appreciation. Professor Meumann is our distinguished professor. Professor Meumann, thank you very much for kindly agreeing to us. And I understand that in a couple of days you are going to have your birthday and advance birthday greetings. Now, coming to Professor Khan. And also, more importantly, I must welcome my co-organizers before getting to Professor Khan and C. Padma Kumar. In our budget, only two individuals' names were mentioned. One was AKG, other was C. Balagopal. And Balagopal, Sri Padma Kumar is younger brother of Sri Balagopal. And if Balagopal was the director of Thirummo Penpol drama, here was the real actor. He was actually acting behind, joined his brother right away from his master's, his MBA program, and he was right through and finally retired from Thirummo Penpol, which was a unit started in the state using the technology developed by the Sri Chitira Tirunal Institute of Technology. And now he is also involved with the state government. After retiring as the chairman and managing director of Thirummo Penpol, he is now also involved with the state government as the in developing medical instruments. The industry is actually helping the government drawing from his experience. I welcome Dr. Sri Padma Kumar and also Ajita, who is, and also the students and of faculty members of political science. And Professor Kannan, is I'm not going to introduce anyone. Professor Kannan doesn't know any introduction. I think perhaps these two people, in fact, Professor Kannan and Professor M.A. Umman are the people who have worked maximum on Kerala. And there is hardly any aspect of in Kerala economy which was untouched by Professor Kannan, right from agriculture, earlier from cashew, and later on public finance and employment. You take any issues. Yes, he has worked on Kerala's development issues. So thank you very much for kindly agreeing to be with us and being one of the panelists. And in the order from here, I think Professor Alvin Prakash, all the students of economics are known for, are familiar with Professor Alvin Prakash. He also has worked on a wide range of issues, and he has published books which are on Kerala economy. That textbook for the undergrad and postgrad students, which he has facilitated the students the learning of Kerala economy. And he's also held very important positions by way of chairman of the Finance Commission, State Finance Commission, and Expenditure Commission. Professor Alvin Prakash, thank you very much, and I welcome you to this. Professor Mary George is here, and Professor Mary George is, she's always online with TV, and a wonderful teacher and a highly concerned Kerala scholar, reflects very emotionally on very different issues in a manner that common man understands. And I think that is what makes her one of the most popular person in the TV, I suppose. I think which she has a unique capability in conveying messages in a very convincing manner to people. Thank you very much for welcoming. And Christabel, we always used to organize such meetings with Department of Economics, and this time this is a unique. We are formally organizing with the Department of Political Science, but we cannot. Because Economics Department, we always work very closely, and Christabel is representing Economics Department, and she has a wide range of expertise and her interest in. Dr. Sonia Ji, please come over. Please. So thank you very much, Christabel. And I'm very happy that Dr. Sonia has reached exactly on time to welcome her. And Dr. Sonia, she is the General Secretary of Self-Employed Women's Association, and a spokesperson. I don't know. I think it's not just gender-related issues. And her reflections last year, I was thoroughly impressed the manner in which she has articulated how the budget has articulated gender concerns. Thank you, Dr. Sonia, for joining on time. And we are expecting Dr. Sri C.P. John, and there will be online. We have Viraman also. I expect here, but Dr. Ram Kumar is a member in looking after the agriculture sector, and I'm sure Dr. Ram Kumar will be, and he has joined us. And I am always impressed by the manner in which Professor Ram Kumar, now with Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and I hope Dr. Ramkumar Professor Ramkumar also. He will be joining a little late, that he has already told me. Now, he is very warmly welcome to this meeting. DGP Alex is a professor in Kerala Agriculture University, and also a member in charge of decentralization and decentralized development. In our state, it's a very important. This is what actually uniquely make our development and development practice unique, and on which Professor Umman has reflected quite a lot. And we have Professor Jiju PLX, and yes, Adi Keshwan, Sri S. Adi Keshwan, formerly the Chief General Manager of SBI. I think we cannot think of a better person than Sri Adi Keshwan to reflect upon the finance-related issues, and his columns in some of the Malayalam dailies are really impressive and highly communicative to the common man. And I'm happy that he has agreed to join us and reflect upon some of the debt-related issues. So I think what remaining are the most important stakeholders in this meeting. I'm particularly referring to the student community, and of course our friends of GIFT joined online. And it goes without saying that our appreciation to you and is enormous. Thank you very much for joining us. And I also welcome the faculty members of the Department of Political Science and students and my colleagues. And of course, the coordinators of the program have done the hard work for getting this meeting organized. Thank you very much. And may I now invite Sri to say a few words before handing over to Professor Newman.
Good morning, everyone. Professor M.A. Oman, Professor K.J. Joseph, Professor K.P. Kannan, Professor Alvin Prakash, Professor Mary George, Dr. Sonia George, Dr. Christabel, Dr. Ajita, ladies and gentlemen. I understand that, as a practicing manager, I am probably in a minority today. So I'm surrounded by economists and economists in training. So I did do a couple of papers in managerial economics. I remember in the independent distant past in my MBA. I don't remember much of it. My little understanding of economics is that all of you look at the big issues, that what causes things to happen, in the macro scale in an economy. We managers do things on a much smaller scale. We work, but we are impacted by the decisions that economists take. So as economists, I'm sure you are advising governments listen to you. And therefore it is very important. I think, management as a science has become very efficient. And you find organizations growing better, richer, more powerful. Now, whether this is resulting in the greater public good is a big question. And whatever I have read and heard seems to suggest that actually we are moving in the other direction. So with all this increasing efficiency and with all these management tools, techniques that we are bringing to bear, there is rising inequality globally. And the same is happening in our country. So if you're going to just look at a budget as a simple statement, like an accountant looks at it, of course, it does give an indication of any government's thinking. To that extent, it is important. But I'm glad that Professor Joseph mentioned that the budget is sought to be viewed in the context of the economic review. So we have to know which context we are talking about. I hope that today's deliberations will look at these kind of questions about not just what we are doing and how efficiently we are doing, where are we collecting the revenue from, what are we spending it on, but by allocating the money in the way in which we are doing today, are we really serving the interests of the people? And, are we serving the interests of or achieving the objectives set out in the constitution of this country? I have some reservations about that, but we have very learned and very distinguished speakers and a panel here today. I'm sure you're all looking forward to hearing from them. On behalf of the Trivandrum Management Association, which I represent, we are very glad to be here and be a part of this event and collaborate with the Gulati Institute of Finance and Taxation. I would like to once again thank Professor Joseph for this opportunity given to us. And we are looking forward to a very stimulating discussion today. Thank you.
മലയാളത്തിൽ പറഞ്ഞാൽ മതി. Okay. Friends, we have a rich galaxy of experts today to talk on the Kerala budget. So it will be a very hard job for me to regulate and be oppressive as a moderator. So what I will do is that I will not take more than 3 or 4 minutes and leave space for my colleagues. Honestly speaking, I have not read the budget. This morning, the first 25 paragraphs in Malayalam, I will immediately give my response to that. At one point, in the speech, you cannot judge a budget on the basis of the speech. You have to see it along with the large number of documents that are relevant to it. But I am restricting for the moment only to the few paragraphs. To the benefit of students here, I must say that the Department of Economics of Kerala University started budget discussions in 1961. And that was probably the first in Kerala. The initiative was by my illustrious Professor P.G.K. Panikkar. And the tradition has gone not only to within the sphere of Trivandrum, the whole of Kerala, and now it has become a big fashion to discuss budgets and forget about it the next day. Both the speaker also. Because promises are made not to be breached. In one of the paragraphs, it is said that Kerala has a comprehensive development agenda for several decades together. But my complaint is that there is no comprehensive vision, except during the first communist ministry here. They had an agenda of rehabilitating and reconstructing the Kerala economy on certain lines. But gone are those days. We are far away from that. And budget is not an integral part of a long vision. It is more ad hoc than leading Kerala to what has become a cliche nowadays, Navodhana. Navodhana Keralathinte Navodhanam. It is in the second or third paragraph, it is said Kerala has made real 12.01% growth. Good. That is a record. Particularly after a great decline slide due to the COVID pandemic. Now, this 12% growth, the next sentence is about manufacturing has increased by 18.9% growth rate. But what is to be addressed is the low manufacturing in the GSDP frame. Maybe 10, 11, not much more than that. I would even say, borrowing an expression of Arvind Subramanian and Rohit Lamba in a recent paper, we are having a sort of precocious servicification. Precocious servicification means, suppose for the sake of students, I would say, suppose a boy is smart in the second standard studying. He is promoted. Oh, he's smart fellow, double promotion, fourth standard. But then he struggles there. Similarly, the growth process is to grow from general pattern, is to grow from agriculture, lowering agriculture, to manufacturing and secondary sector, and then to service sector. Here, a precocious servicification has happened in Kerala. That problem remains unaddressed. So, that's one comment that comes. The next, a few paragraphs later, it is said, my memory is in Malayalam, they say, if 5% savings in the estimates, then that will lead to several fold increase in the savings of the budget. Mind you, the estimates are fictitious estimates. That is precisely why that we are multiplying several this is the guillotine. forgot what. So, if you save your estimates, that is a splendid truth. The estimates are overestimates, allowing leakages for interest groups on the way. You proceed as if nothing is done, like that. Ever so many expenditure commissions are created. How much of the recommendations of these commissions are accommodated? I say this precisely because 100 crores of rupees are set apart for rationalizing the estimates in the budget. And then they said tripartite recommendation for estimate rationalization. One is this 100 crore allocation. Another is plan space, 1 crore additional for that. Then administrative reports. When I came to Trivandrum and started doing research, the main source of our data was administrative report that was discontinued. Now, even in this budget, it is said that administrative reports, the methodology for writing administrative report will be evolved by IMG and then it will be followed. That is para 20. Like that, if in my first 20 paragraphs, if I start going like that, because one of the expenditure committees have said, recommended that 25,000 crore were lost because of not following IGST format. You lose 750 crore because the UGC revision was done at the proper time. Who is to be blamed for these things? And you tax now? Everybody knew that 8,400 crores rupees is not going to come because revenue deficit grant is not going to be continued. Everybody knew it long back. But you have to provide for that. The compensation will stop. It was announced 2 years ago. 5,700 crore rupees cannot be entertained. You have to provide for that. Like that, most of things were provided. And 3,000 crore of additional mobilization. Additional mobilization is required. But have you done your homework? Have you set the house in order before you do that? That is a pertinent question to be asked. You have to sit back and reflect on that. And you say, we are devoting, earmarking 2,000 crore rupees for controlling the prices. 3,000 collecting money additionally, and 2,000 you are spending for containing inflation in Kerala. Either you anticipate that these 3,000 will be skyrocketing the prices, and your additional mobilization is used for that. Like that, I promised that I will take 3 minutes. I have gone. If even the first 20 paragraphs will take me another half an hour. So it is, in fairness, I stop. Thank you. Shall I invite
Yeah, please.
Dr. Kannan, a scholar in his own right.
Anita is ready? Okay. Professor Woman. Change here, okay. 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 With the back one? Okay. All right. Left or right? Okay, okay. The back or forward. Okay, thank you. Respected Chair, Professor Roman, fellow panelists, friends and students. I have not been allocated time, but I suppose I could take what, 15 minutes?
But that I will cut only.
No, then you tell me
No,
if it is 12 minutes, I'll stop at 12. Or you just give me a sign when it is time.
Yeah, I will not restrict you.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank Professor Joseph and his team for organizing this discussion on the Kerala budget and invite me to speak on it. I have made a PowerPoint presentation basically because when you talk about a budget which is full of accounts of the government, what they receive and what they spend, and if there is a gap, how much they are expecting in terms of debt, and whether you are satisfied with that gap, the performance, the allocations of this budget into various heads, and what is going to be the burden of the state in future because you have to continuously depend on debt. These are the issues. So you need to have some numbers and we can't avoid that. I'll try and summarize the main points that I want to convey so that you are clear about what I intend to do. What I find is that this budget 22-23 tells us a full recovery in the Kerala economy. Because we had earlier experienced during 2021, the worst year of the pandemic, a decline in growth of the state income. So it's called normally negative economic growth of around 8%. So our total income had gone down by 8%. But then from that minus 8%, we have now recovered to plus 12% of growth. Some of the press or some of the people would see that this as a fantastic growth rate. But for us economists, it's not a fantastic growth rate because you had already declined 8% and then recovered by 12%, which means what you have got 12.1 minus 8.4, you have 3.8 or 3.9. So the average growth rate for the last 2 years, real growth rate is 1.8. Which is not okay, but not too bad because the impact of the pandemic has been overcome, and over and above that, we have registered a growth rate of 1.8% for 2 years or 3.6 for 2 years. Because of the pandemic, all the states in India had to go for much higher levels of public debt, and Kerala too. But as I will show you, every finance minister in Kerala has a problem, not created by him or her, but by the previous finance ministers because of the historical baggage that the government of Kerala has to carry every year. While I compliment the finance minister for more than proportionate increase in own revenue means the revenue that the state government collects from the taxes and non-tax rates that it has imposed on the people, including its own share of the GST. And that has increased much more than this real rate of 12%. It's around 18%, which means Mr. Balgopal should be happy that his department has been able to collect a little more revenue than the pre-pandemic level, or restore the pre-pandemic level of revenue collection. That's why I said we have now come out of the crisis and we have attained a full recovery. There is a crisis in public finance if it is defined as a situation where the government has to borrow year after year to close the revenue deficit. Now, for those students who may not be very familiar with the revenue deficit, is nothing but the income that the government gets and the expenditure the government incurs, the gap, as expressed usually as a percentage of the state income, which is the base on which you tax people. Which means your income is not sufficient to take care of all your expenses. And that can happen once in a while, some crisis or some other reasons. But if you have it for every year for the last 38 years, then you are in a state of perpetual revenue deficit. And close that deficit, if you have to no other option but to borrow every year, then you are in a debt trap. It's like the theory of perpetual indebtedness. When we talk about the peasant economy, Professor Amit Bhadury's thesis, where the peasant goes to the landlord and takes advance money for his daily consumption, and he works for him. When he works for him, he fixes a wage, the employer fixes a wage and deducts the money that he has taken. The balance is not sufficient for him for the next year's consumption. So he again takes an advance loan from the. So every year he has to manage himself by taking a loan and then paying back every year. So Kerala is in that situation for the last 38 years, given the historical data that I happen to see. There are not many states with such a long period of persistent revenue deficit. So if somebody asks me, is there a public debt trap problem for Kerala? I would say yes. But is it inevitable? I would say no. Because your gap between revenue income and revenue deficit, revenue expenditure could have been taken care of if you had put more effort to collect more revenue. That means there is no need for Kerala to impose any new taxes or surcharges or cesses if it decides to collect what is due. Why I'm saying like this? Because I have analyzed it in my earlier paper, Kerala Model Revisited, where I find since, well, it started from the mid-80s or late 80s, that there is a secular decline in the rate of tax collection or revenue collection. It used to be 12 rupees for every 100 rupee of net state product, that is state income. Then in the 90s, it came down to 10 rupees, 9 rupees, 8 rupees. And just before COVID, it was 8.2 or 8.1. And during COVID, it went down to 6.8. That's a disastrous decline. Then it picked up to 7.6. Now it is 8.4. So you have restored your 8.5% or 8 point something. So there is, if you look at the earlier 80s, 70s performance, you could have collected at least 12% of the income. So that's about 30% not collected. By historical standards, it's not absolute efficiency standards. What you already performed a few years ago. So if Kerala is losing 30 to 35% of its potential taxes, we are talking about at the current state income, it's around 30,000 crores, 31, depending on what is the basis of the state income, GSDP or NSDP, whatever it may be. And that's more than the annual debt that the government of government of Kerala takes. So the debt trap is not inevitable. It is because the government chooses for easy option of borrowing money rather than increasing its efforts to collect taxes that are due. In comparative terms, Kerala is an outlier along with Punjab, West Bengal in persistent revenue deficit. I don't have the historical data, but when I looked at the Reserve Bank of India publications on state statistics, for 15 years, I find there are only 3 states which were running revenue deficits for all the 17 years, last 17 years, from backwards. That is Kerala, West Bengal, and Punjab. Why these 3? That is something I think it needs to be investigated for students who might be interested in public finance. In most fiscal indicators, Kerala has a poor record. So I now come to the comparative aspect of Kerala's performance, because you always, whether a student is good or bad, is compared by others. So in compared to other students, you are a better student or you are not a better student. So our natural comparators are Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, with whom we have the closest economic relation and geographically contiguous. And you can also take the all India average. I'll come to that in a minute. All efforts, therefore, should be on raising the tax to state income ratio, since expenditure compression would be difficult. Now, there could be 2 opinions on that, and I agreed. Dr. Mary George is here, and she's going to talk about expenditure rationalization, and I agree in advance that there is enough scope for expenditure rationalization. But I also see that if there is expenditure rationalization, that money can also be spent for more other urgent purposes. Because there are several institutions which are not getting its due for disbursing salaries, research, development, various other activities. For every 1% increase in tax income ratio would fetch around 10,000 crores by 22-23. Because now, at the moment, Kerala's state income is around 9 lakh crores. Next year, it is expected to be 10 lakh crores. So if you increase your effort from 8.4% to 9.4%, which was also the ruling ratio in the 90s, you would get an additional 10,000 crores. And if you raise it to 10%, the tax to income ratio, you'll get 1.6% more. That will give you 16,000 crores of rupees more in the immediate future. That's what I'm talking about. So let me say, when you compare Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, the first thing to know is whether we are comparable. And I find we are comparable because our per capita income is more or less the same. A 9-year average to 2011, 12 to 19, 20, because a 1-year figure may not be a robust figure, but a longer term average is a more robust one. And then I took 2021 because that's a special year of COVID. So that you should not club it with the 9-year or 10-year average. So you will find these things. But in actual fact, our per capita income is much higher than what is stated in the national accounts, because this doesn't include the remittances. Then you can say, if you want to compare Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, you should also do it for them. Yes, but their share of remittances in their state income is much lower than what Kerala gets. But I leave that because for purposes of comparison, I'm taking the domestic income figures. which is in Kerala's favor, because otherwise your denominator will be bigger. Now, the most important thing is the fiscal deficit, which is the government of India is worried about, because your revenue deficit plus the amount that you took as loan, public debt. And that is what the fiscal debt is about. Our fiscal debt for the 9-year average is higher, not only compared to Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, but also all India. All India means all the states put together, their average. I'm not comparing with central government. It's all the states. So comparing state with states and all states. The revenue deficit, which should not be there persistently, because it is your day-to-day expenses and your income you should be able to manage. So that the debt that you take, you could use it for capital investment, for growth and development. So revenue deficit, Kerala has an average of 2.3% of the domestic income, state income. Karnataka has a surplus, the minus indicates surplus, 0.2% surplus. So every year they have been running a surplus. So in the revenue account, whatever they get is slightly higher than what they spent. And therefore, they have some money from the revenue account to spend for capital expenditure. They also borrow, but then the entire borrowing goes into capital investment. Unlike Tamil Nadu has a small problem. It's a recent problem, last 6-7 years. That's why the new minister, Mr. Tyagarajan, was very critical of the earlier fiscal position of the Tamil Nadu government. Otherwise, they used to run revenue surplus. It's 0.8%. Revenue deficit is not all that threatening, although it increased during the COVID period, but that's understandable. Now, Kerala often says, both the government and also some of the other friends would say, we incur a revenue deficit because we spend on social sector, education, health, social security, housing, and all. But Reserve Bank of India has compiled all this data, and I find that's an old story. Our spending, KL is Kerala, the average for the last 9 years is only 5.6% of our state income, whereas Karnataka spends 5.8%. And TN is very close, 5.5. All states average is 6.9. What it indicates is that several new states have started spending more on social sector. Kerala has a historical advantage because it used to spend more in the 70s, 60s, and 80s. We should accept that. But don't bring that argument now, because now you are not spending more than. So if you, in fact, even if you rank, and budget and brief papers give that, Kerala's rank is now 13 in social sector expenditure. I was quite amazed by that. So that cannot be put forward as an argument for revenue deficit. This again, how much effort are you putting in collecting your taxes? In comparative terms, we are not too bad. Kerala is 6.9, tax revenue only, not non-tax. Karnataka is higher, Tamil Nadu is higher, all India is slightly lower. All states together is slightly lower than Kerala. So our effort compared to our neighbors is not very good. And if you include what I said earlier, the remittance income, this ratio will come down. So we are not putting in as much effort as we should to collect existing taxes. And if you include non-tax revenue, we are coming up to 8.1% as an average, although it went down to 6.8 during the crisis period. I ignore that. So our performance is somewhat better. This is because both Karnataka and Kerala, Tamil Nadu, they have a poor record in collecting non-tax revenue. And I can imagine for Karnataka, but if you are already having a revenue surplus, you are not very strict on collecting non-tax revenue. Although it should not happen, they could have get much more.
And then keep your promise.
Okay, so I will now quickly run through. There are two important items why we have the revenue deficit. One is due to disproportionate burden on pension and interest payments, and that you can see here, 2.4 as against 1.6 for all states. Interest is also 2% of our state income, rather than 1.7 for all states. So we have a burden here. Therefore, it has impacted adversely on capital expenditure. We have a lower ratio of capital expenditure as a percentage of our income, which is 2.2, where it is 3.5 for all states together, and both Karnataka and TN is 3 or above. And that's very interesting. It is because of these that we have a much higher burden of the debt. If you take outstanding debt as a ratio of state income, Kerala at 9-year average is 28, as against Karnataka's 18%, Tamil Nadu's 21%, and all India 24. During the COVID period, we had to jump to another 8 by increasing it by a 10 percentage point, 38, as against all India of close to 30. So that finishes my presentation. And to say that if there is political will, we have the potential to collect more taxes at the existing rates, which we are failing. I can give a number of examples. One is Professor Uman mentioned that the integrated GST, we are not able to get any money. It's zero. If you look at the budget papers, it's zero. And I'm told it's about 5,000 crores per year. So 25,000 crores we are not getting. Maybe documentation or problems. So you have to claim that. You have arrears of establishments not giving. And I'll give you one more example of why commodity taxation is much less than potential. Gold, we consume a lot of gold in Kerala. 20% of India's annual consumption of gold is in Kerala, according to Indian Gold Council. So they have the data of the demand. If you look at the debt, the tax collected on gold, it is equivalent to only 22% of that gold which is supposed to be consumed. So 78% of the tax is evaded in that. Pharmaceuticals, we consume 10% of the total India turnover of pharmaceutical products, whereas our population share is only 2.7. And I don't know how much is collected from pharmaceuticals. So there is a lot of work to be done. And to go into a much more large-scale data analysis by Gulati Institute and others, because we need to go into commodity-wise, we need what is the tax potential by maybe we need a more fresh consumption survey, or from the supply side, we need to have more reliable information to find out the gap. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I took a little more time than I promised. Intellectual politician.
പ്രിയപ്പെട്ട ഉമ്മൻ സാർ, ഇവിടെ സന്നിധരായിട്ടുള്ള ഈ വിഷയത്തിൽ ഇന്ന് കേരളത്തിൽ കിട്ടാവുന്നതിൽ വെച്ച് ഏറ്റവും നല്ല വിദഗ്ധരെ, സ്നേഹിതന്മാരെ, എല്ലാവർക്കും മലയാളം അറിയാമല്ലോ അല്ലേ? എനിവൺ? Yeah, then I should speak in English. Respected Chair, dear experts, and the delegates and especially students. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very important discussion on the present budget. Since Dr. Kannan has explained in detail with facts and figures, it is an easy job for me to explain what is the real position of our public finance and economy. As he rightly said, we are quickly or consistently recouping from the plight in which we had to go through with our colleagues, with our fellow men across the world. So it is good. We have a 12% growth. Technically speaking, it is a low base advantage, isn't it? It's called low base advantage. So from -8 to +12, he explained it in very detail. So it's good. Economy is growing slowly but steadily. And when I come to the tax collection, I appreciate the effort of the finance minister. He's a new finance minister, young comparatively. And he has done his work to a large extent, because from figures, it's very clear that he expected 1,34,000 crores as the revenue receipt, out of which he could collect 1,29,000. And interestingly, there is a dip in the central transfers, nearly 4,000 crores. If it hadn't been, it would have become 133, very near to his budget estimate. And he's a conservative finance minister. He got 1.29 lakh crores as the revenue receipt. But this year, he's expecting only 1.5. In that sense, he could have expected a little more. But unlike the former finance minister who had more expectations, he's also a good friend of mine who taught me some economic theories and all, since I hadn't learned economics per se. But Balagobal is expecting a plus above the budget estimate next year. That may be his argument or his logic. Well and good. He got that much. And at this juncture, you have to think that what Kerala has to do to have more central shares. There is a very, very hot subject that has been discussed for ages. All finance ministers, political leaders, and experts are lamenting about the decline in the central transfers through Finance Commission. It is only 1.92%. I request Gift, how much we lost due to this dip? It is not properly stated. I think Joseph will tell us. What is the quantity of money we lost? If we had a 3.2% or 3%, at least 2.5%, which is our percentage in the population, what is the quantity we lost through the illogical distribution of taxes to Kerala state? I'm not explaining that. And again, coming to the fiscal deficit, as a conservative finance minister, he has obeyed the finance minister of India, 3.5%. Perfect, not 3.51%. So from the fiscal point of view, his budget estimate is 3.5%. And as Kannan said, it is 2.5% RD, revenue deficit, which had to be reduced drastically, but it is not that much possible in these years of difficulties. So this is the picture. So my argument is, slowly economy is growing, tax collection has been growing. And why he put all this cess and tax upon it? My argument is, it will hurt his own effort. It is self-defeating. It may defeat his expectations, because the man on the street has started lamenting about his household balance sheet. This year in Davos, even the World Economic Forum used this usage, household balance sheet. So for bettering the balance sheet of the government of Kerala, why Balagobal done a wrong job on the balance sheet of the households? That's a simple question. And my second point is, so concluding this part about taxations, what we have to do politically or socially even to get the right share from the central government. All are lamenting, all are protesting, everything we are doing, what we can do really to get more taxes. I put this answer to the audience or to the experts. Coming to the second point of my presentation, I am very much bothered about the plan size. What is the plan size? Not a single rupee is increased in the plan size. It is 30,470. This year, the current year, it was 30, the same number, 30,470. And interestingly, in 1920, it was 30,610. 30,610. And the next 2 years, it was dipped to 27,000. What it means? Government of Kerala is not keen about keeping the plan size high. So the argument from the planning board, insiders of planning board, is we are not expending the whole thing. We are only expending 80% or 90%, 70% like that. So why should we increase the plan size? There lies my argument. In Kerala, the practice is approximately 25% of the plan size is considered as the plan size of the LSTs. Prakash sir is sitting here. He had given an alternative suggestion. He said, you need not depend upon the plan size of the government, state. You devolve a particular percentage of SOTR, state's own tax revenue, to LST, isn't it, sir? Yes, sir. That was your suggestion. SOTR, devolving the percentage of SOTR to LSTs. But the government rejected it. Now the point is, I had worked in planning board for 10 years, 2 terms. The planning board is fixing the plan size, and thereby the LSGs are getting 25% of it. What is the logic? The earlier logic was every year plan size will be increasing consistently. But for the last 4 years, plan size is stagnant and even decreasing, and LST's devolution regarding the development fund, that is plan fund, is stagnant, and in 2 years it was lesser than what it was. There were so many reasons in the last 2 years because of the COVID and so many other things, flood, disasters and all. But what is the logic of this year? Last year you increased from 27 to 30, even though 30,470. This year, I sincerely expected a 33,000 plan size, 33,000 plan size. Again, what is the relevance of the plan size as far as the marginalized sections are concerned? Especially students have to understand it. 10% of the plan size is given as the sub-plan. That's SCP for the study of costs. It is called Special Component Plan. What has happened? The Special Component Plan has not been increasing consistently for 4 years. or 5 years. And 3% goes to the tribal sub-plan. Our tribal population is 1.5% of the population. 8 years ago, we had given, or 9 years ago, we had given only 2%. Slightly more than their population percentage. And when I was in the planning board, I'm proud to say that it was increased to 3%. 1% is 300 crores. Even this year, you have to understand. If the plan size had been increased, the marginalized section should have got more plan fund in their hands. And 50% goes to the LSC and 50% goes to the department. So this is a very, very wrong approach as far as a left government is concerned. So this is my criticism about the plan size and holding the plan size. And as you know, there is a plan B for this government, that is KIFBI. KIFBI is plan B. And what happened with KIFBI? It is stagnating. Since finance minister is not here, finance minister is very conservative as well as clever. There is a clause in the KIFBI Act. It can touch on the petroleum cess. You see how this is enhanced? It is called Social Security cess. But the KIFBI Act says government can touch the cess on the petroleum. Whether he may touch, may not touch, that he should say as a disclaimer. And again, the motor vehicle tax. Both these taxes are increased. I'm not arguing, but I am doubting that it may be for taking some money for the KIFBI back. So my presentation is rather over, but two sentences. In this speech and across our social debates, there is a discussion regarding migration, but it has happened always for the last 40, 50 years. But this year onwards, the discussion has changed from migration to exodus. Now experts are thinking there is an exodus trend, and that has to be discussed in detail later. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
We shall have a brief break for 10 minutes, especially we apologize the online participants. We'll get back after 10 minutes because it's difficult to serve team side. Please come. I request all of you to please come inside the auditorium, please. Our next panelist is Professor B.A. Prakash. Professor B.A. Prakash, could you please begin your intervention?
Professor M.A. Uman, Chairman of this session, Professor K.J. Joseph, Director of GIFT, distinguished panelists and friends. See, I have prepared a very brief presentation on the current unprecedented fiscal crisis. The finance ministry is saying that Kerala is facing an unprecedented fiscal crisis. Let me make a few observations about the unprecedented fiscal crisis. What is the nature of the crisis? Kerala has been experiencing a persistent, acute, and unprecedented fiscal crisis. Fiscal data of Reserve Bank of India gives a dismal picture about the state finances. The revenue deficit, see, I am using RBI data to explain the current situation. The revenue deficit in 2021-22 is about 31,000 crores, and it is about 3.5% of GSDP. And the gross fiscal deficit is about 46,000, about 5.1% of GSDP. Outstanding liabilities is about 3.9 lakh crore, is about 39.1% of GSDP. And the major share of this borrowing is used to cover revenue deficit. That means 69% of the borrowing is used for routine revenue expenditure. See, table 1 gives the revenue deficit figures. Revenue deficit figures. See here, this revenue deficit for the year 21-22 is about 3.5% of GSDP. See, we have to bear in mind that the revenue deficit as per the Kerala Fiscal Responsibility Act is zero. In 12 states in India, the revenue deficit is zero. But in Kerala, we find that there has been a steady increase in the revenue deficit. And if you compare with the all India average, you can find that revenue deficit of all states and union territories is about 0.9%. So by any standards, we can say that the revenue deficit in Kerala is very high. Coming to gross fiscal deficit. See, as per RBI data, 2001-2002, the total gross fiscal deficit is about 46,000 crores of rupees, which is 5.1% of the GSDP according to RBI data. And if you make a comparison of this with the all India figures, you can find that gross fiscal deficit of all states and union territories, it is 3.7%. So this data also suggests that the gross fiscal deficit data fiscal deficit in Kerala is high. And you can find that there has been an increase in gross fiscal deficit after the spread of the COVID pandemic. This is about the outstanding liabilities. Here again, you can find that the outstanding liabilities as percentage of GSDP is about 39%. If you again take a comparison with the national average, in national average, it is about 29.5%. Here, our debt ratio is very high if you compare with the national average or with other state. So all this suggests that the Kerala's fiscal crisis is at a high level. See, now what is the position? What is the current position? Except salary, pension, and certain essential administrative items of expenditure, funds are not available for all other items of expenditure. This is the state of situation. The crisis has become a payment crisis. Wherever a payment is paralyzing almost all activities where a payment of a state treasury and local governments are involved. The persistent borrowing to meet the non-planned revenue expenditure has led Kerala to unmanageable fiscal crisis and debt trap. What are the causes of the crisis? The floods of 2018 and 2019, the unprecedented health crisis created by the COVID-19, and the pandemic-induced recession has affected the finances of the state very badly. That we have to accept. But the causes of the persistent fiscal crisis are unsound fiscal policies, poor fiscal management, diversion of major share of annual borrowing for revenue expenditure. The other items are revision of salaries and pensions once in 5 years, lack of fiscal measures to achieve fiscal targets as per the Fiscal Responsibility Act, fiscal extravagant spending of state and local governments, off-budget borrowing to meet revenue expenditure, and under-reporting of finance accounts. Inflated budget proposals on annual plan, inefficient collection of taxes, non-taxes and arrear of tax, corruption in tax collection of successive governments, etc., are some of the other factors. This type of policies and finance administration has ruined the state finances. The lessons learned from the above should guide the state to amend the fiscal policies and fiscal administration. I am coming to salary and pension expenditure. See, I have analyzed the major components of expenditure and what is the most important item of expenditure, salary and pension expenditure. Though a number of factors have contributed to the present unprecedented crisis, the most important one is the salary and pension revision implemented with the government staff in 2021. As a result, the salary bill increased from 28,000 crore in 2021 to 45,000 crores in 2021-22. That is 58% increase in salary bill for 1 year. And what about the pension? The pension expenditure increased from about 19,000 crore to 26 or 27,000 crores, 42% increase. So what is the net additional fiscal commitment? 24,000 crore, 784. So this is the additional commitment created in a year as a result of salary and pension expenditure. Suppose you take the total revenue of the state government. Suppose you take the total revenue of the state government, excluding the grants from center. This salary and pension expenditure is greater than the total revenue expenditure of the state, including taxes and non-tax items. This is the situation for the year 2020-21. Expenditure and salary pension, data is given in table 4. And this 72,579 crore expenditure on salary and pension for the year 21-22. And what is the share to total revenue receipts? 62% of the revenue receipts of the state is spent on 2 items. What about the share to total revenue expenditure? 48%. I think this is the largest amount or item of expenditure which has contributed to the present fiscal crisis. The salary and arrears are deposited in PF account. What is the meaning of depositing this amount in PF account? That means it is equivalent to borrowing money and giving and solving the problem. See, you have to give 8% rate of interest for those deposited. That means you conducted a salary and pension revision, and again for paying the arrears, you are again borrowing by giving a interest rate of 8%. The subsequent implementation of the revision to autonomous bodies, universities, public sector undertaking, semi-government organizations has destroyed the financial stability of the institutions. This has resulted in a virtual collapse of the state finances. The past salary and pension revision has a similar impact. So what I am, on the basis of the facts, I am arguing is that salary and pension revision once in 5 years is the root cause for the persistent fiscal crisis in Kerala and also the present crisis. And if you examine the past fiscal crisis, you can find that there is a correlation is there between the salary and pension revision and also the fiscal crisis. Whenever there was a salary and pension revision, the state was pushed to a fiscal crisis. The lesson learned is that if the state wants to achieve fiscal stability, the state should change the salary and pension revision from once in 5 years to once in 10 years, as in the case of central government and other state governments. The central government and almost all state governments revise salary and pension once in 10 years. Let us also examine about the recommendations of some of the commissions on salary revision. The Kerala Public Expenditure Review Committee in June 2020 recommended salary and pension revision once in 10 years instead of once in 5 years. This committee was constituted by a LDF government. KPRC recommended salary and pension revision once in 10 years, that is in December 12, in which I was the chairman and Dr. Mary George was a member. We have recommended. The 10th Pay Revision Commission had given recommendations for implementing salary and pension for 10 years. So you have to, this is a very important point. The state has appointed a Pay Revision Commission, and that Pay Revision Commission recommended implementing salaries and pension for 10 years. But what the state government did, the state government implemented the recommendations for 5 years. 5 years. Then the 11th Pay Commission, that is the latest Pay Commission, recommended that next salary and pension revision after 7 years. After you have to postpone 5 years plus 2 years, 7 years. The successive governments in Kerala have not cared about the above recommendations and implemented salary and pensions once in 5 years, and they pushed the state to fiscal anarchy. The government should learn from the devastating effect of this type of revision and switch over to a revision once in 10 years. This is what I have to say on this. Then see here, there was a lot of discussion about the center's neglect, transfer of central taxes and grants from the center. It is true that there's a fall in the amount of share of central taxes due to 15th UFC, Union Finance Commission recommendations. But there was a huge increase in the amount of grants from the center. So if you take the total amount of transferred grant amount, you can find that there is an increase. The total revenue deficit grant recommended by the 15th UFC was 53,000 crore between 2021 to 2024. We do not have the facts to say that. We do not have facts to say that central government has neglected Kerala with regard to transfer of central taxes and grants. The 2016 white paper, the state government has earlier published a white paper when the state faced an acute fiscal crisis. What the white paper is saying, the white paper has, which examined the causes of the fiscal crisis in Kerala, has not mentioned anything about the central government. And the white paper, they said that the fiscal crisis in Kerala is mainly due to the poor fiscal management and unsound fiscal policies pursued in Kerala. See, this is the figures, share of central taxes and grants. You can see that there's a fall in the central share of central taxes. I accept that there's a fall. What about the grants of the center? See, the grants received from the center increased from 11,000 to 31,000. Again, 31,000. So if you take, what about the total share of central taxes and the total grants received in Kerala? So can you say that on the basis of this figure that center is not giving anything? Can you say on the basis of these figures whether the center is not giving or center is neglecting on Kerala? And you have to bear in mind that out of the total revenue receipts in 21-22, 41% is the share of central taxes and shares. In 2021, it was about 43%. So these are the facts about that. Then I will conclude my presentation based on making one observation. White paper on state finances 2016. See, when the state faced a crisis, the LDF government, they have prepared a white paper. That means the state finance department prepared a white paper. What they are saying. The major finding of the white paper as follows: immediate challenges, steeply declining trend in resource mobilization, no revenue deficit after 2017-18, commitment on account of increased devolution to local governments, arrears payable on account of pay and pension revision of the employees, huge outflow due to the redemption of public debt in the immediate few years, meeting huge capital expenditure requirements. These are the challenges identified by the white paper. What are the causes of the crisis? The crisis in 2016 has clearly two dimensions. One is on expenditure and the other is on revenue side. The financial stress buildup seems to be a failure both on expenditure control and resource mobilization. This is their conclusion. Then what about expenditure management? Overinflated planned budgets beyond estimated resource capacity, leading to underachievement of annual plans. That is inflated plans without any resource support. Announcing major projects in budget which are not matched by the additional resource mobilization. Less effective control on revenue expenditure explain the rise in this variable. These are the factors. See, I'm concluding. I have expenditure thing. Then on revenue mobilization, underperformance of tax collection machinery in general. Huge amounts of stays issued by the government during the period. Very little progress and initiative to delays to expedite the disposal of cases in appeals and stays. Non-realization of ARM, additional resource mobilization announced in the budget. Undue concessions offered to certain groups of taxpayers. Failure to implement technology support in major. So my concluding remark is that the challenge and the fiscal problems faced today is similar to those existed in 2016. Though a white paper was published in 2016, no further action was taken to improve the state finances. Due to this, the fiscal crisis worsened and reached at an unmanageable level today. So again, the white paper has taken a position that the causes of the crisis are unsound fiscal policies and poor fiscal management and fiscal extravagant spending, corruption of the state government. So the state government should accept the responsibility to present the acute crisis and formulate sound fiscal policies and measures to address the crisis as suggested in the white paper. So what I am saying is that the finance department and the finance people and also the minister should read what they have found in the 2016 white paper, whether they have made any attempts to rectify or make changes on the basis of this. You read it. I think the first thing they have to do is that you address the issues and you implement the recommendations suggested by 2016 white paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Alvin Prakash, for highlighting the crisis conditions and in your perspective, what are the kind of underlying causes, particularly salary and pension payments? Yeah, thank you very much. I wish also what is the contribution of the salary paid people to the GDP? That would have been another point which one could reflect upon. Now, may I invite Professor Mary George? I think we have somehow things are going out of control. It's already 12:10, 12:05. So we have our target is to finish by 1:30.
This is
So,
what I
yeah.
expected.
No, I'm not, this is for general. I think.
Because the population esteemed Professor Women, other speakers, ladies and gentlemen. The population of Kerala? 52% is women and only 48% men. And when I came to the dais, our respected gentleman is telling me, making me remember about the time that I have to, time schedule
Not
that I
only-
have to. So, okay, this is something which I
we are
expected.
professors. We all tend to speak more. That's what I. It's
Okay.
not only to
So,
you.
ladies and gentlemen, in fact, expenditure rationalization is the area which is given to me. And I require 3 hours to talk about expenditure rationalization. From my point of view, I'm a housewife, and therefore I have to rationalize expenditures in a family. Similarly, in a state, how expenditures are to be rationalized, I can do it very well, but provided I am given sufficient time. Okay, but 8 or 10 minutes is insufficient. Anyhow, I will try. Okay. So what I wanted to first say is that expenditure rationalization. Why expenditure rationalization has become a very, very hot topic of discussion? Because, from 1990, 91, because India was at the brink of a debt trap, and then we have to go for LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalization. And then we were reviving from that situation. And in 1997, there was a central pay revision. And that central pay revision allowed a salary hike of 40 to 60%. And the same pattern was followed by all the states, and ultimately all the states went into a fiscal crisis situation. And that 97 pay revision was undertaken in Kerala in 2000, while A.K. Antony was the chief minister. And when when the team studied about the burden of that salary revision, he stated that even if the secretariat is closed down for 2 years, nothing will happen. And because we cannot undertake this type of a salary hike that will take the state exchequer to emptiness. And then there was a strike, and that strike continued for 36 days. Ultimately, government knelt down and implemented the pay revision in Kerala. There was a crisis situation thereafter all over India after the implementation of the pay revision. And then what happened? Government of India has a pattern of pay revision that is 10 years. And all the other states accepted that pattern of 10-year pay revision, and they escaped from the fiscal crisis. Whereas on the other hand, state of Kerala, subject to labor militancy, trade union militancy, and other factors, maybe mainly because of that, again, still continues with 5-year pay revision and leave it up. So how expenditure rationalization in Kerala is required? When, say, from 2000 onwards, I've told you that in 2000, revenue deficit, somebody has already given you the definition and you might be knowing. What is revenue deficit? Revenue receipt, the difference between revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. the difference between revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. What is revenue receipts? Tax revenue and non-tax revenue. What is revenue expenditure? Major portion of revenue expenditure is committed expenditures. What are these committed expenditures? Salary, pension, and interest. When every 5 years salary is, hiked, what happens? These committed expenditures reaches something which cannot be borne by the state. So, in 2002, not because of Kerala alone, from 1997, salary hike, all over India, there was a crisis situation, and therefore in 2002, FRBM Act, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act was passed in the Parliament, and confirmation acts were passed in the states in 2003. And thereafter, what were the mandates of this act? The mandates of this FRBM Act mainly were: one, reduce your revenue deficit to zero, annihilate your revenue deficit in a period of 5 years. Then reduce your fiscal deficit. What is fiscal deficit? I didn't tell you. Total receipts, difference between total receipts and total expenditure. There is a subtle difference between revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. Revenue receipts include only tax and non-tax revenue. Capital expenditures include also Mooladhana Chelavu, the amount that is set apart for investment purposes and others. Then that's everything will come under capital expenditure. So, deficit is, fiscal deficit is the difference between total expenditure and total receipts and total expenditure. Okay. So the FRBM Act mandated that total expenditure, budget deficit should be pegged at 3% of GSDP, 3% of GSDP by 5 years. But these 5 years were rolled several times, and so far we could not reach to annihilation of revenue deficit, neither annihilation of revenue deficit nor 3% point, up to the 3% point of the fiscal deficit. That is why expenditure rationalization becomes very important in Kerala. Now, what is the total expenditure as far as this budget is concerned? The total expenditure of the budget is 1,76,089 crore. Usually, what is the size of a budget? The size of the budget is the total expenditure. And the same will be the total revenue. But here there is a difference between total revenue and total expenditure is seen in this budget, but in the central budget, both are the same. Total expenditure and total revenue are earmarked the same as the same amount in the central budget. Here, a difference is seen, and the difference, if Sri Balagopal Minister was here, I would ask him why the difference. Anyway, the size of the budget is the total expenditure, which is shown in the budget. Okay. Now I may switch over to, my time will be over if not switched over. Okay. How much is the revenue expenditure as per 23-24 budget estimate? 1,59,361 crore is the total revenue expenditure, and that is 7% higher than the revised estimate of 2022-23 budget, a 7% increase over the revised estimate of 22-23 budget. Now, what about capital outlay? Capital outlay is 14,606 crore. That is minus 2% of the revised estimate for 2022-23. Then loans given by the state, 2,123. That is minus 20% of the revised estimate. Thus, net expenditure is 1,76,089 crore. Net. Okay. Now, I'm going to the important areas of expenditure. Committed expenditures, as I have told you, committed expenditures are salary, pension, and interest. these three expenditures usually look at 2021-22. These three expenditures took 81% of the revenue receipts. Revenue receipt, that is the revenue raised from taxation, non-tax, and also devolution from the center, from all these sources. From the revenue receipts, 81% was absorbed by committed expenditures. In the neighboring states, for example, in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu, etc., it is below 50%. Committed expenditures are below 50% of the revenue receipts. Now, in 2021-22, it was 81%. What was the reason? You can easily imagine the reason. Though there was COVID in 2020, salary hike, 5-year salary hike was undertaken in Kerala. That is why it shot up to 81% of the revenue receipts. Now, in 2020-23, it has declined to 70%. You will understand the logic of this. Why we should follow a 10-year per revision, you will understand. Now, in 21-22, it was 81% of the revenue receipts because there was a per revision. That means there will be arrear, everything. Then this arrear will be spread between various years in the following years. Therefore, the expenditure burden will also be spread. Now, in 2020-23, 70% of the committed expenditures took 70% of the revenue receipts. And in 23-24, it is 69.3% of the revenue receipts. And in 25, the next pay revision will come and then revenue deficit will again shoot up. That is why people demand that pay revision should be kept at should follow, the state government should follow the central pattern of 10-year pay revision. Then again, there are other reasons. Now I go to sector-wise expenditure under the budget. Let us see. Education, sports, arts, and culture. This year's allocation is 24,328 crore. This is 7% increase over the 2023-24 budget. Now, I looked at it as the percentage of GSDP. It is 2.15% of the GSDP. I also looked at the percentage of total expenditure. It is 13.8% of the total expenditure. So you look at the important factor. There are, even though there was a tea break, there are people who are about to sleep. I'm a teacher, so my eyes will be roaming around. I will find out if anybody is sleeping. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, please be eager to listen, because these are all things that you have to fight for in the future. We will be over, but you will be here to fight for these things, to fight for justice. Okay, so why I am very bothered about education? What is the major focus of this year's budget? A knowledge economy. How can you cultivate a knowledge economy? You can cultivate a knowledge economy provided you invest in the knowledge sector, in the technology sector. Kothari Commission 1986 stated at least 6% of the GDP of the country. GDP of the country, education is in the concurrent list. If GDP, 6% of the GDP, much more of the GSDP, because it is in the concurrent list, it is in the state, much priority. So more than that, instead here what is done? Only 2.15% of the GSDP is set apart for education. Then how can you build up a knowledge economy? Then again, even from the from the total expenditure, the share given is 13.8%. Therefore, high sounds of the budget doesn't work at the reality level. Then second one is social welfare and nutrition. 12,411 crore is set apart for that. 2% is, I mean, this is 2% higher than the previous year's revised estimate. Of course, Sonia is here to talk about nutrition and all, but you know, you have to remember National Family Health Survey 2019-21 has stated that even in Kerala, malnutrition is on the increase after the COVID. At the all India level, there is a very high spike in the malnutrition level. Even in Kerala, there is an increase. So social welfare and nutrition requires much more than this, but the state has no revenue. So how can? Okay. Then we go to health and family welfare. Ladies and gentlemen, there was a national health policy in 2017. What does it say? And health also is in the concurrent list, is a state subject. Yet central government has also to do. Central government's National Health Policy 2017 demands that states should set apart 8% of their GSDP by 2020. And the central government should set apart 2.5% of their GDP by 2022. Nirmala Sitharaman couldn't satisfy that goal. And look here, the allocation for health, it is 9,935 crore, which is 6% higher than previous year's revised amount. But when it is taken as the percentage of GSDP, it's only 0.87%. National Health Policy demands what? National Health Policy demands 8%, whereas what is allotted is only 0.8% of the GSDP. Then what about proportion of expenditure? It's only 5.64% of the total expenditure. So this is highly inadequate. Why I say it is highly inadequate? We are enjoying first rank in Human Development Index over the years from 1980 onwards. But you know, that's thanks to the private sector in Kerala, not because of public expenditure in health and education, but because of private investment in health and education. And you know what happened while COVID was there? You know, the government of Kerala underestimated the death numbers of COVID. Research institution based on Washington said in India, when Narendra Modi stated 4 lakh, around 4 lakh deaths, that institute said 39 lakh, between 39 lakh and 49 lakh. And first, in the first parliament session after COVID, our Prime Minister, she fought against that argument. But later on, WHO also admitted that. And also, you know, when this Washington-based research institute published this data, or the Hindu and other major newspapers and other Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, such agencies made such studies, and they found that the expenditure is, the number of deaths are much more than what was reported by each and every state at the all India level, as well as at the state level. That Washington study stated that at that time in Kerala, deaths should be not less than 25,000. The reported death in Kerala was only 7,000 at that time. Later on, when ex gratia was announced by the government of India, and when it was reiterated by the Supreme Court of India, people came forward saying that we will file a suit against the government if government does not accept such and such death as COVID death. And then the number increased, and you know, 76,000 people claimed for COVID-related ex gratia. Okay, so that sort of things are happening in Kerala as well as in India, in the health sector, expenditure of the state government as well as the central. And at the central government, you remember, dead bodies were floating in the rivers, in the Ganges, in the Yamuna.
Shall we come to the budget, please?
Okay, I'm going to. Okay, then the other is rural development. Okay, similar engagements are there. Now I give you a national comparison and winds up it in a few minutes, 1 or 2 minutes required. A comparison of states' expenditure on key sectors with national average. 31 states. 31 states, there are not 31 states, but here the position is taken, state position is given to Union Territories of Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir, and Puducherry. And then, what is the position of Kerala's expenditure on key sectors and what is the state national average? Look at education. The national average is 14.8%. In Kerala, it is 14% of total expenditure. The same thing which I stated already. Then, what about health? National average health expenditure is 6.3. In Kerala, it is 5.7. What about rural development? National average is 5.7, Kerala 4%. What about urban development? National average is 3.5, Kerala 1%. What about urban development? National average is 3.5%, Kerala 1%. What about police? National average is 4.3%, Kerala 2.7%. Roads and bridges, national average is 4.5%, Kerala 2.1%. Thank you for listening to me. Think about the budget, discuss it between yourselves and fight with the government to get justice. This is what I have to tell you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mary George, for that inspiring speech. Now we are going to listen to Dr. Ravi Raman. Are you online now? Hello, Dr. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Ravi Raman, if you're not there, hello. May I now invite Professor Ram Kumar? Hello. Hello.
Yeah, Dr. Joseph, can I take 30 seconds to join? I'm very sorry. I didn't expect you to call me before.
Really,
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Give me 30
Would
seconds.
you mind if I invite Adi Keshavan, Sri Adi Keshavan after that? After
Okay,
Adi
that's
Keshavan?
fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
okay.
No problem.
Yeah. Sri Adi Keshavan is online now, and we will invite Sri Adi Keshavan. Thank you very much for joining us. Over to you.
Am I audible, please?
You are very much audible. Yeah.
Yeah. Good afternoon to everyone, including the chairman of the session, Professor Umman, the gifts director, and all the other esteemed co-panelists. I have been a keen listener of the presentations made by the other speakers. I would like, of course, to be brief. Maybe I shall like to take about 10 minutes, not more than that, in offering some observations on the concept of public debt as we understand right now. Public debt, the differing perceptions that are emerging at the global level, especially in the context of the renewed interest on what has come to be known as modern monetary theory. My young friends there, some of the terms which I may be using because of lack of time, I may not be able to explain to you in a classroom sense or from an academic perspective, but kindly jot down these terms, and then enough of information or material is available in the public domain about some of these terms which you may want to read up further. Modern monetary theory has been, sorry.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So modern monetary theory, my young friends, has been receiving increasing attention recently. And one of the fundamental principles driving modern monetary theory is that as long as we have sovereignty over the currency and we have a fiat currency means a currency which is issued on the basis of trust, on the basis of an assurance, and which is not backed by any commodity or any other material material object. Till 1973, if you go back to the history of currency issuance, we had the system of gold standard for currency issuance, but that is that period is over. And right now we are in the system of in the era of fiat currency, where countries have the freedom to issue currency and manage currency independently. I am making these observations as a preface because public debt at the all India level, public debt at the state level also, Kerala and other states put together, are related to the power to issue currency, the power to have debt issued in the name of governments at the state level and the central level, the ability to mobilize debt from the market based on our savings rate, and also the power to issue currency by the central bank. These are very fundamental principles for understanding the issue of public debt in general. And the public debt, the idea of public debt has to be differentiated from the conventional idea that we have towards private debt, that is individual debt or household debt. Individual debt is something which you repay at the end of a particular term. And ideally, as a person running a household, as a person left to manage one's own finances, we would like to be indebted, or we would not like to be indebted if possible. I remember the instance of Deepak Parekh, the founder of HDFC, in a recent interview, was asked, why did you not acquire shares in HDFC? Because shares in HDFC have galloped and you would have been richer off. And as the founder, you would have made a lot of money. His surprising reply was that, I don't believe in taking loans. And the interviewer, who was a media person, was shocked that, are you willing to go on record, Mr. Parekh, that you have induced so many people to take debt by way of housing loans, but you are saying, I don't believe in taking loans. So I'm just differentiating between the outlook towards debt from an individual household perspective and a state or a government perspective. A state government debt or a national debt, which is mobilized through the issuance of securities, is not something which is repaid normally at the end of the repayment period. It gets rolled over, and we have this phenomenon of the debt level of the union government and the debt level of the state governments continuously increasing. This is, my young friends, mark it out. The debt level of the union government, the debt level of the state governments, including Kerala, is continuously on the upside only, because there is no effective repayment of the debt which happens. Neither does the market. Mainly the market is constituted by banks like SBI, major banks, and the insurance companies and the mutual funds which subscribe to this public debt. That is, the union government raises debt from the market. The people who subscribe to the debt are the banks, the mutual funds, and the other money market players. States like Kerala go for raising debt. It is subscribed by money market players. Now, mark out what I said, that the public debt is on a rising trajectory, irrespective of the state, irrespective of the center. Now we come to the debt level. That is reflected by what is called the fiscal deficit, the number which is crystallized. The fiscal deficit of the union government was above 6, from 9.2 in 2020-21. It came down to about 6 levels, and last year it was about 6.4, and the union government's fiscal deficit was 5.9. That is estimated to be 5.9 for 23-24. The deficit of all the states put together in the country, it is available again in the public domain on the basis of the study by RBI, that all the states put together have a fiscal deficit which is at least 2 percentage points lower than that of the union government. Young friends, please mark it out. So the union government is somebody, an entity, which raises debt without any of these 3% or 4% norms being applicable. I will come to why 3%, 4% subsequently. And Professor Joseph, please, stop me at the end of, say, 9 minutes or indicate so that I can finish it within another 2 minutes. Union government is not bound by these 3% or 4% norms. They can go up to 9.2. They will come down to 6.4, 6.3, 5.9. No questions asked. The state governments, 3%, 3.5%. Is there any logic to this kind of an approach? I'm asking. I am not for a moment against some of the comments which came here, like setting the house in order, efficiency of utilization of resources in the state, salary revision being done only in 5 years, not in 10 years. I don't have any quarrel with the fact that the state should use resources efficiently and also diligently. My quarrel, young friends, is with this gross anomaly between the unbridled power of the union government to raise whatever debt it can vis-a-vis states. Mind you, not Kerala alone. It includes all the states. So there is no political color that I am attributing. The states, they cannot raise beyond 3 or 3.5%. And on the whole, the fiscal prudence, if you accept even the 3% norm, has been better for the states than the union government. I cannot think of any logical, reason or rationale for clamping down on state finances and for saying that you cannot exceed 3.5, we will go up to 6, because overall debt of the country is a sum total of these two factors. Now, I come to another point. Let me ask, because there are academics around, what is the sanctity of this 3%? Why not 4%? Or reverse, why not only 2%? What is this 3%? To the extent that I read, this is the result of what is called the Maastricht consensus. We have moved away from the Washington consensus. The only public document that I found which mandates 3% is the European Union, Monetary Union. For the European Monetary Union, they reached a consensus and said 3%. And debt to GDP should be 60%, and we have blindly copied. They are agree with Professor Joseph in the initial comments. He said that we need a public debt profile or an approach towards public debt of a developing country. We don't need the Washington consensus. We don't need the Maastricht consensus. We need a consensus which will suit our developing concerns. And there I come back to the status of Kerala, because there were interstate comparisons made between fiscal deficit of Kerala, fiscal deficit of Tamil Nadu, so on and so forth. Let me at this point, young friends, also point out that Kerala has been number 1 in the social SDG index, which is measured independently on the basis of 17 parameters, which, what does it mean? It means the standard of living of an average Keralite is much better than the standard of living of all other states in India. And this is not a small thing. This is not a mean thing at all. I come to the second point. Yeah, Professor, time? 3 more. Pardon me, 3 more.
4 minutes.
Pardon, 2 minutes or?
3 more minutes, 3.
Okay. So I come to the other index, and I'm more, talking to the young friends around there. Multi-dimensional poverty index. This is again Niti Aayog's index, which is constructed adopting 3 major indicators. That is health, education, standard of living. And underneath these 3 broad parameters, there are, I think, 12 or 13 factors. You please Google and find out. Which is the state with the best available, index score under this multi-dimensional poverty index? Kerala. And all other states are, below Kerala in terms of the measurement of this index. Now, I am coming to, for a state which has shown this much of progress on SDG, multi-dimensional poverty index, we will have to, of course, study, and I would request, Gulati Institute to study how much of public investment, public expenditure, public outlay has gone towards creating the infrastructure and other, support mechanisms which has resulted in this achievement. Professor Mary George referred to private investments having been the reason, but I think it requires a deeper research. But what I'm saying is, what is the end result? And for a state which has to maintain the standard, and which is in fact a model for the other states in India, model for the country as a whole even, the SDG score of Kerala is 75, young friends. The SDG score of India as a country is 60.4. So if Kerala were a country, it would have scored ahead of India as a nation in terms of the social indicator, measures. I am not saying that we should take pride in Kerala being number one in all of these parameters and give the go by to some of the key issues which were discussed. That is setting our financial house in order, salary revision, interest, pension, and other, expenditure being way ahead of what is being incurred by other states. But there again, let me focus on one key figure. Interest payment has been highlighted as one of the areas where our revenue deficit is high because interest payments are high. My friends, the interest payments budgeted for 2023-24 is 26,000 crore. Total budget expenditure is 1,76,000 crore. So it is less than 20% of the budget, Kerala budget. Okay, 1,76,000, 2% is 34,000. Interest payment due by the government of Kerala for its public debt is 26,000. What is the interest payment budgeted by the union government? 10 lakh crore on a budget size of 45 lakh crore. So I would tend to submit that this public debt concern is overblown and blown out of proportion to a point where we tend to restrict our developmental goals, we tend to restrict our welfare objectives, and we may fall into a trap by stressing too much on this public debt indicator. And I'm saying whether at the union level or at the state level, because if you have a fiat currency and if you don't have external borrowings much, then I would say that in a fiscal deficit of 3.5, 4%, etc., unless somebody is able to scientifically say that this is the basis for that 3% or 4%, is just a mindless copying and will do nobody any good. And there is enough money in the system. The state, SLR holdings, which is the debt securities holdings of the public sector banks in India, that is the last sentence. The RBI mandates the banks to hold 18% as the investment in government securities. The current holding is 18 plus 8, 26%, which means there is enough money to subscribe to the debt. Let us not constrict this debt, even as there is great merit in saying how the debt is utilized is important, but the quantum of debt, to my mind, has to be seen from a modern monetary theory perspective and not from the prism of the Maastricht Treaty consensus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sri Adikeshavan. You could not have been more perceptive. You could not have been, I think in a world which we are living today in Kerala, particularly, journalists are particularly I said there is an excess of experts, public finance experts in budget time. And the kind of message that we get is that Kerala, every child is born with 1 lakh of debt. And be careful when you get out of your home, somebody will catch hold of your throat. This kind of a perception of public debt, and you have made very insightful remark. Thank you. Thank you very much. I can keep on going. Mr. Enja, the former finance secretary and the secretary of the Finance Commission, a couple of months ago when I met him, he told me that the revenue deficit grant is the prize that central government has given to the state government for its remarkable performance. So, let us, I'm very, very thankful to you. Thank you very much. Now, may I invite Professor Ramkumar?
Thank you, Professor Joseph. And it turned out that it was quite appropriate that Mr. Adikeshavan spoke before me, so that some of the outstanding issues were dealt by him, and I need not have answered a few. But I still want to make a little point about the whole discussion in the morning, and I'll use just one slide for that. And I hope I have 15 minutes, Dr. Joseph, or 12 minutes. What is it?
I think 30 in between.
Sorry?
13 minutes. 13.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So you asked me to speak about agriculture and rural development. But as I was listening to the morning conversations in this seminar, I decided to add 2 more slides to my presentation. And one of them is this. Before we sow the farm, let's just look at how much money is available. Debt to GSDP ratio is not considered after 2020 by the union government as a significant indicator to look at for center or the states. This is a quote on the left side from the fiscal policy document of the Union Budget 23-24, where it points out, as on date, the fiscal deficit is the only operational target for fiscal consolidation. So let's look at the fiscal deficit and what is happening to the fiscal deficit for a little while. Look at this table that I have put before you. This gives you the gross fiscal deficit of the Union, of Kerala, of all states, and what is permissible as per the regulations of the central government, right? Now, look at 2018-19. The gross fiscal deficit of Kerala was just 3.4%. Or 2019-20, the gross fiscal deficit was just 2.9%, which was 0.1% lower than the FRBM limit of 3%. Then came COVID. And when COVID came, the central government allowed all states to increase the fiscal deficit to 5%. So Kerala was legitimately able to increase fiscal deficit. It was not a crime. It was a one-time allowance given to all state governments. However, you disagree with the FRBM legislation. This was an allowance given by the central government for that year. Up to 5% you can go. And the CAG documents actually show 5.1% fiscal deficit. This is what today's newspapers appear to be screaming as headlines, as the CAG report. But what is important to note is that a large part of the GST compensation that the central government gave to states was not given as grants, but as loans, which need not be repaid, but it was given as loans. So that got added to the fiscal deficit. So the corrected fiscal deficit, which is there in the parenthesis in this table, was only 4.57. Again, lower than 5% that the central government allowed for all states. Now, remember the central government had 13.3 during the same year. They come to 21-22, we fell further to 4.1% if you deduct the GST compensation loan part, which is just 0.1% higher than the permissible limit set by the central government. So we are well within limits set by the central government in terms of what fiscal deficit should be, regardless of what we think about the legality or the economic validity of a fiscal deficit. So that's the first point that I wanted to make. And if you look at the future path of fiscal consolidation, there is a very clear path set out in the medium-term fiscal policy statement. And if you look at the medium-term fiscal policy statements over the last 6 to 7 years of the state government of Kerala, the path has been strictly followed, and only COVID was an exception to the limiting trend. So very clearly by 25-26, the budget expects the fiscal deficit to return to 3% of the GDP, which is exactly what the central government also demands. The other question that a lot of scholars discussed was, of course, the question of debt to GSDP ratio, which is not a target for fiscal consolidation currently considered by the central government or the budget. But let's consider that there is the debt to GSDP ratio will be high because it is an accumulated debt which is in the numerator. So if you're allowed 5% and fiscal deficit for 2 years, obviously class 10 mathematics will tell you that accumulated debt will rise to 39%. It needs no rocket science to argue that. But the point is, where are we going from there? We will be 34.6% by 25-26. And if the government does not hold on to this fiscal consolidation path, of course, all scholars are, of course, they must hold the government by their word. Now, having said this, let me go into my area of work, which is agriculture and the rural areas. And I have said this over regular presentations at GIFT itself, that Kerala's agriculture is facing a serious crisis for over a decade. Over the last decade, Kerala's agriculture has grown at a negative growth rate. In real terms, the absolute decline in the GSDP from agriculture and allied sectors is close to rupees 8,000, which is extraordinary a loss for the Kerala farmer for over a decade. Now, this is the larger background. Kerala's agricultural sector is not growing. Kerala's agricultural sector is scoring a negative growth rate over the last 10 years. Now, there is a green shoot, which is that after COVID in 21-22, our agricultural sector shows a bouncing back with a growth rate of 4.6% at the positive side. But that's not enough. We need to record such positive growth rates for a regular period of 5 to 6 years to catch up with what we lost in the second decade of the century. And that is where we need to think about what must be our strategy in agriculture. The 14th five-year plan basically identifies three major challenges in agriculture in Kerala. The first is there is no agriculture revival possible without a significant rise in the productivity in a range of crops. In other words, a closing in of the yield gap is an absolute necessity if we want to raise growth rates in agriculture. The second is that because of the fragmentation of land and produce, we have a fragmentation of the harvest itself, which means that we have no facilities of aggregation of agricultural produce in India, which leads on to marketing as the next stage. So we need to have efforts to create collectives which will create facilities of aggregation and marketing of crops. Number three, of course, the inability to link farmers' produce to industrial investments in value addition. These are the three important challenges that we have to look at when we are looking at the budget. And in my view, the budget which was presented last week very clearly addresses these three concerns. And I'm going to give you a little table here, which is very detailed, and I do not have the time to go through each of it. But essentially, if we consider the three challenges of raising production and productivity, increasing facilities of aggregation and marketing, and increasing investments in value addition, there are significant allocations made in the budget with respect to these challenges. So if you look at the first column of raising production and productivity, there are specific schemes for increasing the cultivated area or reducing or even eliminating fallow lands in Kerala in a period of about 3 years, universal provision of soil health cards and unified soil portals under the Soil Survey Department, something which we have started in the past, crop and farm-based plans based on agroecological zones, which will take into account the micro environments of Kerala's agriculture, focus on paddy, vegetables, and millets, because this is the International Year of the Millets, and production will be focused both on individual farms as well as focusing on collective farms using cooperatives as an instrument, increasing direct subsidies through department and LSGs. You must be interested to know that the total subsidies per hectare given to vegetable farmers is something close to rupees 30,000 if we consider both the state government and LSG assistance given to the farmers. In paddy, this goes right up to rupees 40,000 in some cases, and that's something that is unprecedented in India. Kerala is the state which provides the highest amount of subsidies to farmers. But the question is, we cannot go on giving direct subsidies unless we are also able to increase production productivity, and that's where the efforts have to be focused. We have reached a plateau with respect to increasing direct subsidies. So we need increased availability of quality seeds, availability of biofertilizers and green manure, integrated nutrient management, which is very important because in Kerala, the total fertilizer consumption per hectare has fallen from 106 kilograms in the early 2010s, 2011 or 2012, to just 36 kilograms per hectare in 2019-20, which in our view is an extremely dangerous trend. And it is quite clearly correlated with the stagnation of production and productivity in the state. So integrated nutrient management is a very important goal. So is integrated pest management. We also need mass campaigns to ensure our agricultural practices are GAP or good agricultural practices, GAP standards, and also safe to eat standards. And there is a lot of money set aside for demonstration plots towards this purpose. The completion of major and medium irrigation projects is a very important challenge. The budget announces that Karapura and Banasura Sagar projects will be commissioned in 2024, which will be a superlative achievement, given that they were begun in 1978. It's a matter of shame that we were not able to complete it before that. If they are commissioned by 2024, it would be a big achievement. So is the case with Idamalaya, the recommissioning of the Parashi project. There is a dam being built for vegetable farmers in Patisheri in Idiki, which is likely to be inaugurated in 2023 itself. These are big changes happening in the field of irrigation, and I think these must be taken note of in such discussions. We also plan to expand on irrigation, especially micro irrigation. There is a huge project under irrigation department as well as under agriculture department now. Then there is a question of addressing the human-wildlife conflict where allocations have been raised significantly. So is the case with aggregation and marketing. There is a big scheme called CETA, which is a scheme for integrated technology-driven agriculture, where the idea is to set up panchayat-level agricultural markets and aggregation centers and link them at the block and district levels. In other words, to create a good and efficient supply chain for agricultural products at all levels of governance. This also goes hand in hand with some other measures in the budget, such as increase in the support price for coconut from 32 to 34, but that's not adequate. We have to look at it self-critically. Our procurement systems are still very weak. Even though prices have been raised, we still need to procure green coconut from the farmers efficiently. That's something we need to focus on in the coming time. Also in value addition, you can see those big industrial investments which are in the pipeline: the Kinfra Spice Park, 3 integrated rice parks, the Coconut Industrial Park, the integrated coffee park, and the rubber company in a CL model. All these are also items in the budget which have received some attention, and I think they're very laudable in their introduction. Now, coming quickly to 2 more points, and I'll close my presentation. The very important initiatives in the field of animal husbandry and dairy also, where Kerala is close to self-sufficiency in milk production, which is a laudable achievement in itself, which means that we are going to have a problem of surplus, which means that we'll need a powder factory and an evaporator plant, which is likely to be inaugurated in 23-24 in Malappuram, which is a good thing. We have 2 big challenges in dairy, which is to raise the productivity of milk from the present 10.25 liters per day per animal in Kerala, where we are ranked second in India after Punjab, which is 14 liters per day. But that could be a good target to achieve over a period of 5 to 10 years. And the major challenges there would be changes in breeding policies and feeding policies. And if you look closely at the budget documents, as well as the approach paper to the 14th 5-year plan, there is a very detailed strategy listed out on what these changes in breeding and feeding policies are. There's also a meat sector strategic plan in the budget, which might warrant some discussion. The last point is about fisheries. I have exceeded my time by 45 seconds, my watch shows, but I'll close it quickly. Marine fisheries, the whole idea has been to strengthen social security as well as physical security, including preventing coastal erosion and so on. And in inland fisheries, the whole focus has been to increase production, where there's a huge scope for income-enhancing activities in the rural areas, increasing the number of ponds, increasing cultivation in those ponds and so on. But the big challenge we are facing there is we do not have enough fish seeds, which is a complaint across the state. So the budget puts in new money into hatcheries and fish seed farms, and we do not have something in fisheries which are similar to Krishi Bhavans in agriculture. So there's a new idea of creating Malsya Bhavans in in the fisheries sector. We can't have it in every panchayat, so we are planning to have it in every block. 152 blocks will have one Matsya Bhavan each by 2026, and the idea is by 23-24, 100 blocks will be covered with one Matsya Bhavan each. There's also money in the budget to sort of expand Vanamai shrimp farming, which is an emerging area in inland fisheries, including in brackish water. And that's also an item where a lot of money has been put in. These are the broad points, and I wanted to make. The idea was to highlight the major achievements in agricultural sector, including the allied sectors of animal husbandry and fisheries. But let me go back to the point that we should not exaggerate the fiscal crisis of Kerala. And I go back to this this table of mine, which we must study very closely and understand where Kerala is, rather than citing absolute numbers and converting into per capita numbers and creating horror stories out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Professor Ramkumar, for sharing your, I must say, insightful intervention on agriculture. So it's very important, though our reader share is less, there are a lot of issues which you highlighted, and apparently there's a focus in the budget for that, and also for sharing your perception about fiscal deficit. Thank you very much. Now, I understand that Ravi Raman is there. Professor Ravi Raman, are you there?
Yeah, Joseph.
I think, yeah, please. Our plan is to conclude by 1:30. We have 3 more speakers. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I will take hardly 5 minutes, if you don't mind.
I hope I can believe you.
Yeah.
Please
Can
go
you? So you can hear me. Yeah. You know, I mean, hardly 2 or 3 points. The thing is that, you know, when Mr. Balagopal, our finance minister, made his presentation last year, I made a comment. I said that, look, Balagopal has opened up a counter-cyclical window. I mean, I made it specific that he was opening a counter-cyclical window in the sense that he didn't bother to impose any taxes. Given the fact that the aggregate demand was so weak, it was quite unproductive to impose any taxes. So, and at the same time, he was not ready to compromise with any sort of welfare measures. And Kerala, you know, as a whole, as a social democratic government, we really don't want to compromise with any of the social welfare programs. We just want to strengthen it, support it. So the thing is that this time, I mean, again, instead of not imposing any tax, he has imposed tax. And there should be a specific reason for that. We know that there are some historical conjunctures in the sense that the fiscal space has been squeezed over the years. It has been reduced to, say, 37%. And then, you know, that, what should I say? There are some other issues also, which has reduced what is called the fiscal space of the state. I mean, in terms of what is called the cess and surcharge and like that. So the net transfer of resources from the center to the state, you know, that has been declined. So in this case, he has imposed some taxes, and that's a subject of debate on the streets. So the point is that now we find that there is an increase in what is called the taxable capacity of the economy. And we have the evidence to suggest that the taxable capacity of the economy has been increased, whether you take the case of per capita income, whether you take the case of what is called the per capita consumption expenditure, or say the gross state domestic income. So what we are asking is that just we need a small share of that increased taxable capacity of the state economy. That's the only thing that we are asking. And we are asking this only for transferring those resources for what? For developing a care economy exclusively meant for those who are above 60 years of age. That is basically for developing this, what is called welfare function funds. So it is in a sense a transfer of resources from one particular generation to a generation of over 60 years. That's the thing that I thought of highlighting. And in this context, you know, we are just taking a very minimum share of the increased taxable capacity. And apart from that, I must also say that we have evidence to suggest that over the years, the income inequality in Kerala has been declined. So that also could become a source of legitimacy for the reason why we wanted to impose a tax. That means we are not going to curtail any kind of welfare expenditures. Instead, we continue to invest in other sectors. And apart from that, I mean, we also have long-term objectives like what? We wanted to go for, say, for instance, carbon neutral state, you know, within a few decades. So we really want to reduce the consumption of petrol, diesel, and like that. That means we wanted to reduce our dependency on fossil fuel, and then only we will be able to reach the net zero, what is called the carbon neutrality state, or we would be able to address the climate change sort of issues. So what I'm trying to say is that we have long-term objectives while imposing this sort of taxes. And apart from this, I would just add one point to what my friend Adhikasan has highlighted. I mean, such a wonderful argument he has made. As part of that, I would also say that when we say this debt as part of what is called the GSTP, normally we add these three components together. That is the market borrowing plus loans and advances, and also the total liabilities of the state. I think that's a wrong practice, if at all we are adding that. And in most of the discussions, we give this figure by adding those liabilities also. But if you deduct those figures, and if you take this public debt alone, then you would find that the percentage share is only 25.5% or so, and that also has been declined to 24%. So the whole discourse generated by the opposition could easily be described as debt dystopia. That is an imagined kind of misery because of this debt. So it's only a dystopian view of debt, and that's why that I would prefer to call it as debt dystopia of the opposition. So what I'm trying to say is that, as Mr. Adhikasan has rightly pointed out, that there is, of course, we don't want to increase this borrowing. We don't want to go for that, especially when you find that there is an increase in interest rate. But the thing is that we mobilize resources from the public, otherwise we will have to go for more borrowing. So at the moment, we want to reduce our borrowing, and that is specifically why that we suggest a minimum level of increase in taxes from the public, exclusively meant for developing welfare measures and strengthening the welfare system of the economy. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Viramanan, for forcefully putting that interesting point in terms of how to justify a higher rise in a tax rate or whatever the success which the budget has come forward with in terms of affordability, in terms of equity, in terms of sustainability or green issues. Now, may I invite, I think I understand that Professor Jiju Alex is here. Professor Jiju,
yes,
could you please, yeah, the floor is yours. Yeah.
Is it all right? Hello.
Very much.
Can you hear can you hear me?
I'm able to hear you, but your PowerPoint is not getting shared.
I see. Okay.
Please share it.
How about now?
Yeah, it is done now. Yeah, we can see your PowerPoint. Yeah, please go ahead.
So, respected chairman and all other distinguished panelists, I would like to describe a few things which have not been mentioned by my fellow members of the State Planning Board. We have heard quite a lot about the issues of resource constraints and how the state government has attempted to address this, and various gray areas which are yet to be made clear. But the State Planning Board, in fact, we already had this, we already were aware of what was going to happen with the resources, particularly in view of the fact that there would be reduced receipts, there are substantial reduction in receipts from the central government. So we had already made an attempt to find out the various projects which are not productive. We had a detailed examination of projects which are unnecessarily doubled, or maybe the duplication of projects have been found out, and we had tried to reduce it as much as possible. And also we had a close examination of the efficiency of implementation of many of these projects. And wherever there had been less expenditure, those projects have been given, I would say, less significance or emphasis based on the merit. And also the plan monitoring system, the MAS, to monitor the resource utilization and the level of implementation was also upgraded. The plan space, we have got a plan space 2, which can capture micro level details of implementation, and also the monitoring the accomplishments of financial as well as physical targets this time. So that would certainly give a much more, I would say, clearer picture about what is happening at the grassroots level and how the efficiency of implementation could be increased. And also the local self-government institutions have got their own exclusive plan monitoring management information system that also has been revised to capture the physical targets and the financial targets in much more detailed manner. So these were the preparations that we have done to have a realistic and more productive or more practical kind of a budget. So the major thrust in the local self-government sector is that the plan outlay for LSJs that was increased substantially to 27.19%, which includes a share of the World Bank project on solid waste management. So in fact, as per the recommendations of the Finance Commission, we should have increased the outlay from 26.5 to 27%. This time there has been a slight increase, particularly because of the inclusion of this project into the outlay of the local self-government institutions. And when you go by the real expenditure incurred by the local self-governments and also the kind of share that we give to them, the overall outlay comes to almost around 40%. Maybe it comes to 41% or so. So that means a huge sum or huge amount of money is being spent by the local governments. If you go by the absolute numbers, state share and other plan programs, which forms the part of the state share of the centrally sponsored schemes, including that, it comes to a whopping 3,044 crores. In many of our discussions, what I have found is that we leave out the fact that Kerala is the only state which gives 27% or 26%, maybe only 1/4, invariably 1/4, more than 1/4 of its total outlay to the local self-government institutions, with clear-cut instructions on as to how to spend this money, what should be the thrust areas, and how the money has to be spent on various maybe priorities. So I think no other state has got this unique way of spending money, 25% of the total plan funds. So this has to be considered, and this has to be considered with much caution, I would say, and also with some kind of enthusiasm, because of the fact that we don't have this kind of a model or a system anywhere in the country. So this is going to make a huge difference at the grassroots level. So the major thrust this time is that there is an enhancement, there is a thrust on enhancement of production and productivity, particularly in view of the crisis in which we are in, the financial crisis. We wanted to maybe encourage the productive forces of the economy. So at the grassroots level as well, we have to enhance production and productivity. In spite of the fact that various departments have come up with several schemes with the same objective, a more micro level intervention would be effective. And I think this and thrust on enhancement of production and productivity by the local governments is going to be a major point as far as this budget is concerned. And second one is the emphasis on promotion of nano and micro enterprises. We know that there is a robust startup ecosystem which has evolved over a period of maybe 3 to 4 years, last 3 to 4 years. And we wanted to extend this facility to the grassroots level so that a common man who wants to start an enterprise would be able to straight away walk onto a local body and maybe ask for help. So now there are provisions at the local government's level to provide them with various inputs. It can be technical know-how. It can also be funds. So for example, we have introduced a new system of providing financial assistance to entrepreneurs by local governments, which was not there earlier. Now the local governments can give to nano entrepreneurs seed fund, technology transfer fund, revival fund, incubation fund, etc. And also there would be, along with this, there would also be a major thrust on establishing various facilities across the state to provide training, skilling, and incubation support to these entrepreneurs. I think in coming 2-3 years, this single intervention is going to have much greater impact than what we expect in the rural economy sector. And the next one is we also have established a few new innovative institutional arrangements to formulate and approve the project proposals at the grassroots level. That means they're translating the whole concept of startup mission or maybe facilities of that kind at the grassroots level. So this is in view of the fact that we have to enhance nano enterprises and micro enterprises at the grassroots level, which would certainly enhance the pace at which the economy would make progress. So again, there are a few very unique interventions which we have made this time. I mean, this is a continuation of what has actually happened earlier. So in the previous budget, we had declared the extreme poverty eradication program. We have identified 64,006 families across the state which are very poor, or we have already initiated certain interventions to provide them with the basic facilities. I think almost all of them have been given maybe healthcare systems. Local bodies have already started that. The second phase of this program is formulating micro plans to provide them with livelihood options, maybe provide them with much more greater facilities so that they can lead a decent life. Maybe they can be given greater care, etc., etc. And the second phase of that program is going to be launched this year, for which we have earmarked 50 crore rupees again to the local self-government institutions, particularly for those institutions which do not have adequate plan funds, maybe not plan funds, adequate own resources. So in such cases, this corpus fund at the state level would be of use to them. They can have money from this corpus fund. And MGNREGS, this is in contrast to what has actually happened with the union budget. While the union budget had a tendency to reduce the allocation for MGNREGS by almost about maybe 30,000 crores or so, this budget, we have earmarked money to create an additional employment of 10 crores in the state. So the state share is going to be a good amount. And also we have the national, with the urban employment guarantee program. Urban employment guarantee program, again, a unique experiment which has been initiated only by the state of Kerala. It has not been initiated by anybody so far. This time we have given 160 crores again to this particular, and there has been a substantial increase compared to the previous year allocation. So urban rural employment program is another very pointed intervention to address the issue of rural poverty and also the problems of livelihood. And Life Mission, as usual, this year we have targeted 72,000 houses. And there is I would say, a substantial thrust on waste management this year, particularly with the start of Kerala Solid Waste Management Program, and also almost about 5 to 6 programs have been announced in the budget this year, particularly to address the issue of liquid waste management, which is a major health hazard as far as Kerala is concerned. And also we have given substantial trust to care economy. So at this particular point, I would like to point out one important issue, which is usually not discussed by us. That is regarding the state share of centrally sponsored schemes. So one of the panelists have been arguing that the central is giving so much of assistance to the state governments, and Kerala is also getting that assistance. I agree to some extent, but the way in which the centrally sponsored schemes are implemented, the conditionalities laid down by these centrally sponsored schemes are most of the time not suitable for Kerala. There is absolutely no freedom for states to improvise or to customize the provisions of the centrally sponsored schemes. And you are compelled to earmark a definite amount of money as the state share. In most of the cases, even after you satisfy all the conditionalities and criteria, there are huge lapses in release of this money at destinated at stipulated time intervals. What actually happens is, in such cases, we are compelled to earmark these plan funds for the states for centrally sponsored schemes. And if the center does not release the money, this money cannot be counted as utilized. I would say this money actually goes to the non-plan resource. So again, there is a reduction, not because of the fault of the state government, but because of the faulty release of funds from the central government. And we have examined this time, and we have seen huge amounts of money have to be earmarked as share of these centrally sponsored schemes. Most of them are not suitable to a great extent, particularly because of the fact that there is no provision for us to improvise on the schemes of the central government. We don't have any particular freedom to customize this program to suit our environment, to our geography, and also to our demographic features. So this is all about, maybe in a nutshell, about the thrust on LSGAs in this budget. I think the local governments are going to be strengthened much more than what had been done earlier. And this would certainly have a great impact on reviving the economy of the state.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Jiju, for enlightening us and informing us that under the budget, the LSGs are given the importance, and they are able to perform their function of making the productive sector more vibrant in a most locally appropriate manner. Thank you very much. I think that in any session, important meetings, important people speak at the end, So people generally, always we keep the audience, otherwise we move away. So we always keep the important people at the end. So we have two important people here. And also I believe that only whom as an organizer can rely on is only women. All men left, I suppose. Only women are reliable. Okay, over to you, Sorry. Come closer. So we want to celebrate a women panel now. We want to celebrate a women panel. Over to you, Dr. Senior. Sorry.
Thank you, Professor Joseph, and all the esteemed panelists. And I know it's really the end of our limit, and it's more than 3 hours we are sitting and discussing, and no more we can register anything. I'm very sure. Maybe I'll stop very soon. And also, as Professor Joseph said, no, this is not first time experience. Whenever I have been part of any budget discussions, especially with GIFT or government, we have been the last speakers, and we'll be rushed and say, no, you give to us in writing. So that is the normal practice that is happening. So this is what, when we speak about gender budget, and also position of gender in the mainstream Kerala society, the same reflects everywhere. So nobody listens. All mainstream panelists they want to speak for more than 15-20 minutes, and that so there's no division of even actually time. So I'm sorry to say that, but that happens every time, not first time that I'm experiencing it. So I think all the panelists have said different aspects, discussing about the real constraints of the budget, from its fiscal complexities, no, to taxations, to over expenditures, and why we are forced to impose such the justifications for that, all that we have heard. And some of the sectoral, especially we heard from agriculture and also LSG perspectives that we have heard. And maybe I think Kerala has been celebrated for its gender budget for some time. And we have been knowing that quite a good amount has been allocated for gender budgeting in the process of the Kerala budget for the last many years. And now it's like 20, 20.1, 20.3, 2021. No, that's the range of process that is happening. And I think when you look at it, I have always looked at it as, there will be a huge gap between macro and micro realities that is always happening when it comes to budgeting, and budgeting for the marginalized, socially marginalized group of people in the society. So that micro analysis is not well reflected. Even I think many of the things are reflected in the economic review, but when it comes to budget document, that micro realities comparing to the macro expressions are not rightly pointed out or rightly allocated. That is one of the main things that I would like to point out in the budget, because again, we talk about social spending, welfare, and majority of the schemes that is coming under the gender budgeting is under the head of the broad head of welfare that is happening, rather than talking about bringing or people to the mainstream to or equally, that the inequality questions are not discussed very seriously in the budget. That is something that we have to speak about. This year's also the focus on of gender budgeting is on women's safety and gender mainstreaming, education, skilling and employment, health and social security, and gender friendly infrastructure. And when we go through, it's actually there are two plans, Plan A and Plan B, and Part A and B, and on which Plan A is supposed to be 90 to 100% allocated for women and or transgenders or children. And the second part is from 30 to or below 90%, whatever is allocated for women. That is how in the course of time or in the course of budgeting, it has been seen how different departments, how much money is allocated for women's budget. And I think when you look at the economic review, it says that large number of job seekers are women. And how do we address that question in the budget? I cannot find a proper answer or link that to when it comes to the real budgeting process. And it says that another important or significant thing about the Kerala household is that more than 22% female-headed households are in Kerala, and it's a big number compared to all India numbers. So that means many women in Kerala are managing. It's not that female-headed for us, the interpretation of female-headed is not only that women are living alone or single parent or whatever it is, but I think it's not 22%. Majority of the families now that we involve in our daily work, majority of the women manage the household economy. And so or how the state has to care for such a society where female responsibilities are increasing every year. And that is something that we have to think more in terms of the debt crisis and the allocations. What have been seeing that the allocations are very, very typical for many years. It is Kudumashri, it's NREGA, it's Kerala State Women Development Corporation, or Kerala State Women's Commission. These are the main or the broader sector of allocations that is going under the gender budgeting that is coming out. And when you look at the next side is that when you look at sectoral or for example, when you look at the skill acquisition program of the state, where in the gender budgeting program, even if we say that we have to increase the gender participation rate in the labor economy of Kerala, it says that when you look at, you can see that it is 1% allocation, 2% allocation, 6% allocation, 16% allocation out of the total amount, like starting from 500 crores, 300 crores, or 100 crores of allocation for skill acquisition, skill development programs. That is one thing that I have had to say. And agriculture, Professor Ramkumar has said much about the agriculture sector, and the gender budget talks about a peculiar term, and I was amazed by the usage of this term. I don't know, some of you have seen that feminization of agriculture will be one of the priorities. No, I don't know how do we understand or explain the term feminization of agriculture. I think feminization of poverty is there. No, feminization of many things that we are talking about, but feminization of agriculture. And when you come to the budget, under the gender budgeting document, we can see that most of the things we say that the agriculture sector of Kerala is maintained by women. Women are being targeted as the most important stakeholders in the agricultural processes. And then we see again, less than 50% of all the allocated funds in agriculture are for women under the gender budget. So how do we address this contradiction when you talk something in the economic review and when you come and the review says that there is a huge gap in wages which is not yet addressed. We say that how do we address that wage gap, especially in LSG programs and in different sectorial allocations, where the budget is not saying anything about addressing the wage gaps between or the gender wage gaps in Kerala society. That is not being addressed at all with different points, because NREG means there's a specific allocation, 300 rupees, and that is far below the average minimum wage of Kerala, and more than 95% of the persons involved in NREG programs are women. So majority of the women are getting far below the minimum wages of Kerala. So how the state budget should record these gaps that is going on for some time. It's not a new phenomenon. I'm talking about, we are talking about so much. And we have seen that we have been giving so many suggestions as part of how do we improve or enhance the resource allocation in terms of gender budgeting, or say the entire Kerala economy, as we have been discussing in the expected and experiencing fiscal complexities. Means what we have been arguing is that there is enough, as many of the panelists argued, that there is enough resource in the state, means that we have been thinking about. But how do we tap that resources in terms of skills, in terms of participation in the employment force? Because we concentrate so much on enterprises. We have been talking so much on enterprises for the last many years. And when you look at post-COVID, I don't know how the planning board or GIFT or others could study about it. Means when many people have started new enterprises as part of post-COVID recovery scenarios, majority of the people who have been running enterprises or small shops or whatever it is, forced to stop their enterprises. So there is that account is not coming when you talk about enterprise or number of enterprises that have been started under Kudumashrees or NRLM or NULM missions. That is not mentioned, because every year there is an increase in number. But who is recording, documenting enterprises that have been stopped? And since our experience is that women have been talked as a beneficiary rather than a person, a self-employed person in the process, most of the money that have been given under the enterprise allocation under LSGs, we are sure that it has been used for other purposes, including house maintenance, paying of dowry or paying marriage expenses, and those kind of things that has been used for enterprises. Now, so how, I think one of the major submissions that I have to make is when you evolve a data, when you evolve the situation, economic and social situation of a group of people, means whom we say, Adhikeshwan sir said, Kerala is very high in terms of SDG indices and whatever it is that we are coming to think. But how we are analyzing or how we are documenting the process, the real process that is happening, how we are measuring the changes that is happening, how we are measuring now this inequalities that we are facing in our everyday life, and how a state like Kerala could think about. One of the examples that I have to say, Professor Jiju has said, care economy as the last one, and he didn't mention means explain it, but care economy we have been discussing for so many years that care economy should be discussed as one of the important priorities of the state in employment generation and also income generation. But what the state designs on, or what the state conceptualize on care economy is a big issue, because we always say that, when you talk about healthcare, Kerala is #1 in healthcare, and number of people who are trained in any of the health systems, Kerala will be #1, and most of them are females, and their service in terms of skill and in terms of accessing of resources in the state is not at all being tapped in any session. So how are we talking about care economy? And Dr. Christopher is talking about the knowledge economy, and knowledge economy also have this. When you are not able to tap the existing resources and the knowledge skill of the people in a particular context, what are we speaking about knowledge economy? What kind of resources are we talking? And this could be how this could be linked with LSGs, how this could be linked with the plan and non-plan outcomes of the budget, and how this could be used for increasing what you call generation of income to the state. That is something that we have to talk very seriously, where there is no data, where there is no proper convergence of the projects that is happening as part of any departments. And without saying that, when we talk about gender budget, and one more thing that I'll stop, especially about when you talk about other employment formations, that we have been seeing again in the traditional industries. The economic review again says that majority of the traditional industries in Kerala are survived by women. But when you come to budget allocations, less than 30% is allocated for women to revive the traditional industries. For example, ASAP or CASE, which are the skill hubs of Kerala, who are the professional skill givers, skill trainers of Kerala. When you come to the budget of skill SAP or CASE or whatever it is, when it comes to traditional industries, it's all modern technologies, modern industries, modern forms of employment, but not the traditional industries of Kerala, where majority of women either be handloom or bamboo or fisheries or cashew or coir or whatever it is, that we have to really think about how the resources and the skills of women being tapped under knowledge economy, and traditional. How do we link? These are very important. And when it comes to, finally, I say, when so much interest and focus is made on the safety of women in the process, we have been seeing more and more women being attacked. More and more women, feels that Kerala is no more a safer space for them to live, in a very, self-dignified position. Is there a problem in us designing the concepts of safety and security rather than rights over bodies and rights to freedom? That is one of the biggest challenges that Kerala society and the planning board has to think very, very seriously, because these are failing. What Pink Police is doing, that is one of the biggest questions that we have to raise when so many crores have been allotted to safety programs under the gender empowerment programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sonia, in such a magnificent way highlighted the concerns of over 50% of the population, and you are the only privileged speaker who was not interrupted by me. Thank you very much. And now comes the more, again, we are living in a world wherein knowledge is the key resource. And we have Christabel with us to reflect upon the different forms and in the budget, how budget looks at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure I will not have to Christabel,
Yeah,
you know that I will not have to interrupt you.
yeah, sure. I'll finish it very fast. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
You're
Thank
more
you.
socially concerned.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. So we were listening to what present India, present Kerala is. So let me say something about what will be the future Kerala. So that's why I'm starting with what Kerala, knowledge-based economy is. So it is always, we all know that it is the latest stage in the development of societies. And usually, we believe that the knowledge is becoming the main engine of economic growth. So it is also considered as a new phase of development in which the human knowledge, skills, information, and technology takes a major role or place. So here in this presentation, I'm trying to bring out what are the things which are there in the budget speech as well as in the economic review in order to look into the importance of the quality education, skill upgradation, innovation for imminent development of the state. So let me just present the framework of knowledge economy, which actually has 4 important pillars, which is profounded by the World Bank. It is about economic incentive and institutional regime, and also it has an important part as far as the educated and skilled workers are concerned. And we can also see the effective innovation system. And the last one is about the modern and adequate information infrastructure. So this is the framework on which the knowledge economy is resting upon. So I'm trying to look into the documents, 2 documents, that is the Economic Review 2022 and Kerala Budget 2023-24 on the basis of this particular framework. Yeah. So when we read the Economic Review 2022, yes, there is a new chapter included in Economic Review on higher education, and there is a subsection for knowledge economy. That's a welcome attempt from the part of the planning board to prepare that kind of a document and try to capture the nuances of knowledge economy and presenting it in a very, very thought-provoking manner. I'm trying to bring out very important things which are there in it. So we could see that the document says the higher education is there and it is for the growth and development of the economy, and the government of Kerala is trying to take a lot of initiatives to enhance the academic standards, increasing the enrollment ratio, especially in the higher education tertiary sector, providing young people with state-of-art facilities in the sphere of higher education and so on. And also there are a lot of challenges we are facing as far as the higher education is concerned, and also the knowledge economy, that is regarding the inheritance of the benefits of all the higher education. And there exist a lot of inequalities across the regions as well as the social groups, so that the government has to take steps to alleviate all these kind of things. And the review also is bringing into a major concern about the restructuring of the system, because we have a very strong system of higher education in our state, but not only the higher education but also the school level. So the review is envisioning that we need to have a comprehensive restructuring so that we can move ahead with the knowledge based economy. And naturally, a lot of policy imperatives could be seen. A lot of surveys, studies have been conducted on these lines, and a lot of rules and regulations as well as policy introductions have been made in this line. So we can also see that there is a vision for the government in order to have a transition of higher education. We are better off in a lot of things, but at the same time, when it comes to the investment for infrastructure development, manpower deployment, collaboration with institutions of global repute, that kind of things, when it comes to that important linkages where a knowledge economy can flourish, that where we are not that much better off. So there is a need of transition of higher education in that ground. And also we can see mentioning of the curriculum, because the higher education is always criticized for the curriculum they are following, and what all things we can do in order to create a new curriculum, so that the students can be aligned with the knowledge economy. And also it talks about the academic freedom and the promotion of spirit of inquiry and so on. Yeah. Yet another concern we can find in the review is about the information and communication technologies, and also we can also make use of the interactive digital communications in order to bring or have an inclusive kind of higher education in the state. Likewise, the review also emphasizes the importance of research and development, where the institutions which are there in Kerala, sometimes it is not going up to the level, and it is not in a position to create good research papers or research projects, or bringing out patents and so on. So in this context, we have taken some initiatives, and some commissions are there. There are some reform movements, or reforms are suggested by the different commissions based on the studies by eminent people. So they have suggested regarding the financing, because whenever we talk about the higher education, we have been listening to a lot of areas, where in all areas the financing plays a very important role. And as we are aware that Kerala is a state which is having a lot of financial issues. So the commission started suggesting some measures in order to finance the higher education sector. So this is the a very short analysis of what economic review is trying to look into the knowledge economy. Now let me move to the budget, and what are the dreams which are there in the economic review has been converted to the budget. So surprisingly, I could see that the R&D budget this year, the innovation happens in this way, that there is an R&D budget is prepared by the government in order to have an impetus to the research and development activities in the state. Likewise, there is an international research scholarship has been introduced in order to make some kind of exchange programs for the teachers and students in different universities and research institutions with the other universities in the world. And we could also see that there is a huge allocation for the higher education. There are some other allocations for the colleges and other things. About 816.79 crore is allocated for the higher education and technical education. And there is a risk fund is given for the translational research, because the research is happening in many of the institutions, but it is not translated into products. The innovations and the inventions are not transferred into innovations. So for that, a small fund is allocated. But at the same time, given the framework, or given the background of economic review and Kerala budget 23-24, what all the suggestions we have seen, or the recommendations we have seen, there are a lot of challenges also when we try to achieve the overarching idea of aligning towards the knowledge economy of the modern world. We can see that there is a huge brain drain. Even the budget has made it very clear that our youths are actually moving out of the state, so that they have to be retained, and if they have to be retained, proper employment opportunities are to be generated for them, then only they will be staying back. Otherwise, there is a huge brain drain. For knowledge economy, as we have seen in the framework, the skilled workers are very important. We have to do something for this kind of brain drain. Yet another important challenge we have to address is that of the innovation ecosystem. Naturally, the knowledge economy is a system of consumption and production based on intellectual capital. But at the same time, we can see that the cutting edge technologies, especially artificial intelligence, data analytics, and other knowledge intensive fields that that are to be given utmost importance. Even now, our higher education, we are there in the conventional way of giving out the syllabus and other things, but we are hardly moved to all these new kind of knowledge systems, so that those students can find a space in the modern knowledge economy. Likewise, a lot of organizations, the firms, research centers, universities, consultants, and other organizations, they are to be revamped and also be integrated and upgraded to the modern world. Likewise, the last challenge is that of everyone knows about the digital divide as well as the technology divide. So we know that for achieving a proper knowledge economy, we should have the ICT, information and communication technology, but Kerala is not in a very good position as far as the technology is concerned, and naturally the different social groups, they will be falling behind when it comes to implementation of these kind of technologies. So that is yet another challenge. Let me finish my presentation with one small data. I have not used any data, but the last point is that of the innovation index. Kerala is in the 8th position of innovation index, which is put forward by Niti Aayog India. And Karnataka was the first one, Telangana stood second, and Kerala is only in the 8th position. We have a very good scope to reach the first position, so that in future I think we can climb the ladder and have a good economy in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Christabel. You are always very good, and your knowledge is really good. But only thing is that a couple of things that last dessert which you served could have been avoided, because that's a very faulty index. If you look at Global Innovation Index and Indian Innovation Index, this is a faulty index. We have a note will be coming inevitably on that. Okay. And second thing is, knowledge is not just our knowledge. There is also synthetic knowledge. This is scientific knowledge you're talking about. Synthetic knowledge is equally important, because man on the street, farmer on the farm, their knowledge is very important. And Kerala is very high on human development, not because of VSSC over there. Thank you very much. Now, anyway, now I think what next? Questions or food? Food for thought, or you want? Yeah. Please, we are looking for this. Yeah, please. At least.
No, it's not. Good afternoon. I think it's all of tired. I think it started a little nap, I think. I'm Dr. Nahas. In the management side, I'm very little awkward in the economics and all. So I'm very happy to have heard this very efficient, excellent and exceptional budget analysis. Because the layman or the common man, when we read the newspaper, we heard Kerala, the budget is self-reliant, or Kerala will be self-reliant, or Kerala will never be in debts. But this proves that even if we are not efficiently utilizing our resources well, certainly we will be in failure. This analysis proves that we have to use our resources very well, as now our youngsters, because the trends we are hearing is almost all the youngsters between 18 to 25 going abroad. Even my children are in abroad. So these resources of youngsters are resources utilizing properly to Kerala, certainly Kerala will be good. But even that reflects in the budget. Thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you. I think you summed up everything in a very nice way. Again, we have a lot of thanks left with. Before that, any questions, any pressing questions? If anybody thinks that okay, you can't take your lunch without the question, please. Okay, you have. Yeah, please. Pardon? Adhikeshwan is here. Yeah, very much he's here. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm connected.
Please.
Sir, I agree with you that there is an impressive, Kerala has an impressive record in human development indices. But what do you think about the quality of education and the health services which Kerala is provided, especially in the context of the discussion of out-migration of students to abroad for education and employment opportunities?
I think it is a very interesting question. Next seminar can be on that. I think we have to travel a long distance. And Professor Adhikeshav and Dr. Adhikeshav is a finance expert, and we have education expert. We'll arrange another. I think you're raising question is more important than answers. Okay, in particular in social context, you raised a remarkable question. I think that will leave a lot of. I think if there is any quick answer for that, I think do we need into that?
Yeah, I listened to it. So, in fact, it was not related to the thrust of what I was trying to convey. So, I also concede the point that the quality of expenditure and the outcomes which we are deriving, which is what the young friend referred to, are matters of importance and ought to be discussed. But of course, I'm not, I have not studied the issue.
I think your connection got lost, it looks like, and you don't need to show the empty chairs. There are, please. There are people here. Why do you want to show empty chairs? Okay, now I think we will. That's an important question. We have to travel a long distance towards that, and also our generation. You know that today, during the last 10 years' time, the people who have taken, who left Indian citizenship doubled. Okay. And there is none perhaps in the room who will say no to a green card. Anyone will say? Anyone will say no to a green card? No, that is the tragedy. I must say that. Now, I must take the pride that, okay, I don't want to say that. Okay.
Dr. Joseph, can I make a half a minute intervention?
Why not?
Yeah, no, if you are talking about higher education, I think we have a lot to commend ourselves. That is, if you look at the All India survey for higher education, the gross enrollment ratio of Kerala stands somewhere between 43 and 44%. It is as a share of the 18 to 23 population as the denominator, which is one of the highest in India. But also, if you consider that at least 3 lakh students from Kerala are studying outside Kerala, then that means our gross enrollment ratio effectively will be going up to 55 to 60%. That is something remarkable for a state of Kerala's stage of development. That is one point. But the second point is also on quality. If you take a list of colleges in India, which are in the first 200 ranks of NIRF or NAC A++ rank, then out of the top 200 colleges in India, there are about 40 colleges from Kerala in that list. So if you have 40 out of 200 in that list, all is not rotting in the state of Kerala. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, the glass is half full. I think that is your perspective. Well taken. I think, of course, these are all matters on which we have to travel.
Dr. Joseph, what?
Yeah, please.
In fact, I also want to add a few points to this. One or 2 points. See, we have to see what the government has initiated to address this issue. So it is not that we have got statistics and say that we are behind anyone. In fact, we have initiated quite a few very constructive steps to address this issue squarely. So when we consider such kind of discussions, we ought to find out the efficacy of the initiatives that we have taken, whether it is going to pay off or not after maybe 1 or 2 years.
I perfectly agree with you, Dr. Iqbal. I think this is not an issue.
I'm Jiju, Alex. Jiju.
Yeah. Viju, I thought Dr. Sorry, you are the same voice. Okay, right. Okay, Jiju, I agree. Okay, well, I think let us not be, that is not the focus today. Okay, if higher education, you raised an important issue. We can have a separate issue on the discussion on that. I think it's only 2 o'clock.
Joseph, I want to ask a question. Joseph, I want to ask a question.
Okay, you have taken
5
your
minutes.
lunch, no?
No, I have not. I have not.
You haven't? Okay,
no,
then you can. Please.
I was listening throughout. I just wanted to raise a question to Sonia, because one issue she raised was very interesting, but one was more to inform her. So the first, to inform her, naturally the budget will show most of the allocations to Kudumbashree, to Women's Development Corporation, to Women and Child Development Department, to NREGA, because those are the government programs. So the government programs have to be funded by the government. So you'll have large allocations to those same agencies again and again until we put in some new programs, and then they will also appear in the, like the Ayankali Urban Unemployment Guarantee, that then came as a new initiative of the department. So that will always be there. You can't say that we see the same things again and again, because government has to fund its own agencies and departments. That's one question for information. Second, Sonia raised a very interesting issue that macro level, we see a certain picture, but at the micro level, we don't see the appropriate allocations being made, because we see very low work participation rates, but when we come to the budget, what are we doing for the employment thing? Now, you see, one of the things you should understand is that these are the issues we have raised as priority issues for the Kerala women. Okay, and of course the transgenders, I keep forgetting to add them, the transgenders. Now the thing is that every department has to do their task in addressing these priority issues, one of which is creation of employment, livelihoods, and an enabling environment, including the care economy. So this, slowly we are bringing the departments into the picture. We can't say now 50% should go to women because we have 50% women sitting at the macro level. We can't do that. Slowly they will come, and that is how we are now come to a situation where 21% of the funding is going to women, and also that the fact that most departments have some employment scheme for women. And of course, the violence thing also is spreading across departments. So we want all departments to pitch in to address the macro issues which women are facing. So that is what I wanted to just clarify.
You expect a response from Sonia, or it is
no? I don't expect a response. I just
want your point is well taken. I know.
Okay.
I know.
So long as Sonia says it's well taken.
Mridul is always, a person with the right perspective, So
okay.
You're always right.
But one thing I must say, Joseph, I think I agree with the women. No, Joseph, I have to say this. You should not keep the women at the end. That's very unfair.
No.
That's very unfair. I also felt that. Okay.
Henceforth, in any discussion, gender issue will be the first issue. In fact, have you noted that these were the two privileged people who could speak any amount of time, and I never disturbed them. All others were stopped in between. These were the two privileged people.
We prefer to be time bound, but be coming first. Okay.
Your point is well taken. You know that we don't mean any.
Okay. I know. Fine.
We understand each other very. I think let's have yeah. Okay. Teacher, you want to say anything very emergency?
Very emergency. Emergency.
Education problem, and that is why I didn't want to give you, because if you won't be able to stop. You will stop?
I will definitely.
Will they get the dinner? Okay, fine. If you can assure them of the dinner.
To you.
Okay.
In 2020, IMF made a statement that out of the total immigrants of the world, 22%, that first rank is from India, 22% immigration. And out of immigrants from India, Kerala has the first rank with 19%. What I wanted to say is that more students from in Kerala migrates to other countries because of our greater exposure to the outside world. We know life in other parts of the world, especially in the Nordic countries or in the US, better than the life here. The work culture there is better than the work culture here. Therefore, if they go over there and study, definitely their position will be better. That's why all of them try to go abroad. Then again, one more point. Several times, High Court has interfered in Kerala's political infiltration in the campuses. Campuses should be devoid of hot politics, and that causes lose of quality of education. These are the two I wanted to make.
So brief. I never thought that it can be this brief. Okay, thank you very much. I think now this is the time for out of thanks, and this is going to be given by Dr. Ajita. Please.
Respected dignitaries and my dear friends, warm good afternoon. We all know that budget is the backbone of the society and administration, and it is one of the important areas of good governance. And this is the right time to speak about this. And my responsibility to say the word of thanks as a formality. And we know that this is, there are 3 team members, GIFT, TMA and Department of Political Science. On behalf of all of us here, first we have to say thanks to these 3 members. And then our chair, Dr. Professor M.A. Oman sir, and our panelist, Professor K.P. Kannan, P. Jones sir, Professor Alvin sir, Mary ma'am, Sonia madam, and Christabel teacher. And we have Dr. K. Ravi Raman and Professor R. Ram Kumar and Sri Juju P. Alex. They were with us through online. I'm so sorry, Sri Adikeshwan sir. All of them are enlightened us, and on behalf of GIFT, Department of Political Science and TMA, I express a sincere gratitude and hope this day will lead us to think more about our economy, and we'll learn much more in a better manner. And last, without you people, we cannot do anything. Okay. And you were patiently listening and raised your comments and all. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ajita. You know, in Kerala, when if somebody gives a gift at home, particularly for non-Kerala, if you're saying that, even if suppose you go for a dinner, we carry some gift, the host will immediately take it and say, "Hey, why this gift and all? You should not have brought this gift." But immediately we'll look at what is inside. Now, thanks, although not very important, you all see how she said it, that I mentioned. We are very concerned about it. So thank you. It's a very important event in this meeting. Thank you very much for being with us, and with TMA and with Political Science Department. We think this is the beginning of a great journey that we want to kind of undertake together. And I especially thank our audit department people, our tax department people, Mr. Jiju and all of this. Thank you, Biju and all others. Indu is here. Yeah. And the online people, of course, and my technical staff, they always make it happen in a flawless manner. My supporting staff, you are going to have a nice lunch. Those who are working hard over there and waiting for us, I thank them. So all of you, thank you very much. My coordinators indeed. Yeah. Yeah.